Hey, what is up, Internet Land? We are back for another episode of the Eh-soteric Archives. Really excited for this one today. We are joined by Chris Crutchfield, host of the 6'7" podcast. And he's got a lot of exciting things on the go. He's working on documentary, and you've probably seen him on some other big podcasts and stuff. So we are blessed to have him with us today. So thank you, Chris. And I'll maybe fire it over to you, and you can do a little intro, tell people where they can find you, and we'll get this show on the road.
Absolutely. My name is Chris Crutchfield. I am 6'7". So before the 6'7" trend came out, I was the 6'7" podcast, the original. And I'm mostly active on Instagram and YouTube. I have essentially I'm baking a lot of content in the vault so that I can essentially litter everything everywhere. But because I don't love that social media algorithm hustle game, I don't play it that well. So most of my censored or more, controversial stuff that YouTube won't allow is all on Rumble and Odyssey. But the majority of my work is on Instagram and YouTube as well.
Awesome. I'll make sure I include your links there in the show notes and all that. But that's actually that's how we got connected, was just a random post on Instagram, and started talking back and forth. And yeah, you definitely schooled me on some stuff.
Well, so that would be a great way to kind of enter this combo, because you guys, as I've started to kind of soak up what it is that you already talk about, you are already tracking. You're piecing all the same puzzles together that I've pieced together with my research. And at the end of the day, my goal is to try to demystify this idea of the expert, and just say, like, you really do have enough God-given sensibilities, intuition, and smarts to put our heads together, or an individual's time and research together to learn what's going on. Maybe not fully, but at least to a pretty large extent. And so I'm listening to your Project Bluebeam episode, and I'm like, oh yeah, right on, viruses, right on. They're getting it. Yeah. And it encourages me, because it's like, I really do enjoy having conversations with people who I like, almost strangers, not total stranger, but an almost stranger, where it's kind of like, I don't have a need to please you or displease you. I don't have no this way or that way. I just want to know what you know. And we've engaged already, even passively, in a way that makes me aware that y'all been doing y'all homework, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you remember the original post?
I think it was on My Maria 777. It was on her page, and I think it was just about how she was kind of getting like pre-COVID vibes, and just noticing that people were starting to like fall ill again, or have these like the energy was sort of changing the same way that it was before all that kind of kicked off.
Yeah.
And my comment was that I haven't noticed like the illness side of it, but that there definitely is, a change in people's thought patterns and things like that. And I kind of was putting the pieces of the puzzle together that, like, obviously they're spraying stuff in the skies, and maybe that's what's causing this, right? And then you kind of came in with the frequency warfare stuff, and we just kind of started piecing it together, and that's where it went from there.
So that's right. So what I can say that will probably dovetail right in stride with what you've been talking about, at least with the last just few episodes that I've seen on your channel, is that the Bluebeam /MK every one of these little tentacles of the conversation is the same exact conversation. The missing piece to me was that a element of our electromagnetic cosmos was redacted from academic awareness for about 100 years and then placed back. So what we call Star Trekian, or I remember you were talking about the other Chris guy who's like,
Chris Knowles.
Yes, exactly, and
Yeah.
how he was kinda you're like, "I like the guy, but he's kinda like going" like, I'm hearing your commentary on it, and I'm going, "They're tracking the exact same way that I'm tracking." The way I articulate it is simply, we were given the bottom 5% of the '80s R&D that may or may not have made it to market, but there's all kinds of new R&D, and there's a whole, 95% that we weren't given. And it's not that it's untrue, it's just that it might have been something for a season, or they might have developed a better technology that replaced it or usurped it. So the zoom out that I guess the audience, if that's okay, I know I'm just kind of jumping off on this
Oh
topic,
yeah.
but
Go ahead.
so it helps to know that my backstory is based in, like, I was like a nerd kid. Okay, so I'm 41. I'm a little older and a little younger than you guys. And I was born in 1984. So that means, even though I was essentially, I would say I had a kind of anomalous childhood compared to a lot of people that I know now, now in my adulthood. At the time, I would have considered it pretty normal, but it was a traditional Southern Christian evangelical private school upbringing. I was very interested in computers and technology and tinkertree and networking and internet stuff. But I was 6'7", and everybody was like, "Bro, play basketball." And I'm like, "Okay, let's play basketball." And I was good at both, but my hobby was more tech stuff, and I just was decent at basketball. So even though I got scholarships to go play basketball at some smaller schools, I didn't end up using or accepting those because I wanted to go to engineering college and study computer science and stuff like that. And so I did, and then that trick quickly matriculated into a conversation that was more about, "Oh, I don't wanna code all day, I just wanna use technology to design art and, like, be
Mhm.
creative and productive with technology." And ironically, my career ended up becoming that. I didn't I would say I taught myself most of what I used in my professional career, but what the reason I'm giving you this backstory is because I went from sports heavy or tech heavy to sports heavy to kind of like media and entertainment industry. And since 2006, when I graduated college, so like 20 years ago, I fell into video production, and then that led me into jobs that then got me confidence to move to Los Angeles. And then a couple friends who knew a guy who worked at Sony who needed a thing. I got a call, and boom, boom, bada bing. Before you know it, I'm doing Google commercials and, bigger projects. And so I got to see the inner workings of the entertainment industry. And even working in it, I just thought it was the marketing side of things.
Mhm.
What now, 10 years removed, what I understand is that it is the marketing side of things. NASA, the very people we're talking about on the esoteric side of things, they just want you to think that these industries are separate. That's what the documentary is trying to help coalesce and say, "Listen, you guys, it's the same thing. Like, trust me, like, I know y'all might not know who I am, but I'm trying to tell y'all it's just the same thing." So it was me getting knocked off my high horse in 2015, having, you know, the year before, having just done one of a music video for one of the, not one of the biggest song in America and Canada at the time, from some Canadian artists, by the way. The song was called "Why You Gotta Be So Rude?
Mhm.
Don't You Know You Into," that song.
Yeah.
But they're all
Mhm.
from Canada, and I'm still friends with them to this day. But that was all before. And then I get to become aware of some things. I get to move in some rooms, and I see, yo, there's a layer here that I'm unaware of, and I'm bumping into it occasionally. And then I research and I go down the rabbit hole, as it's often referred to, until I basically have a crash and burn season where I realize, you guys, nothing, nothing at all in this world is like we're told, because I work in the industry that presents it all to you. And this industry isn't what y'all think. And when I started connecting Freemasonry and all the secret societies, and all the, that initial esoteric learning that one does when they first fall into a rabbit hole, it hit me that what kept replaying in my mind is, we are further into this than people realize. We're further into this than folk realize. It wasn't until COVID that I even decided to start talking because my wife kept nudging me in the rib saying, yo, you better start talking about what you know because people need to know this and you can articulate this well. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but I'm still a student. I'm not a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher right now. I want to learn. She's like, we don't got time for that. People need to know. Okay, fine. I start the podcast. I run my mouth about the vaccine enough times. It goes viral. People come my way. Information comes my way. And then I enter into the zone where I'm getting like an a la carte, almost like curated list of the most interesting things from people I've already pre-selected as the most interesting people that I've kind of connected with in this whole podcast realm. And that puts me on the whole side of the conversation relating to the Internet of Bodies, the Internet of Things, this whole techno bio integration. I spent the good 2020 to 2023 basically going to medical school to understand what is a lipid nanoparticle. Because what happened was the video went viral and then I got really scared that didn't know what I was talking about. Like I did, but it was like, if I'm being challenged by MDs, like I can't just, I read it once and the thing, it made sense to me. No, I got to know what I'm talking about. And so I really did take it upon myself to learn how this stuff works from a biotechnical sense. And when I learned it is when I was like, you guys, they're like changing genetics on y'all and y'all don't even understand what this is because y'all just don't understand what reverse transcription is in the concept of molecular biology. It's like too big of a word. Can't even hold the thought long enough to define it for half the people who took this shot. So it became incumbent upon me to just really learn how all this works. And that led me to the work of a few people who've catapulted my understanding of really where we are today in terms of the tech. And because I already had enough of a networking computer science tech several years of my life, I worked unrelated to that stuff, but I did work for Apple for a while. I worked and I interned with electrical engineers. So I had enough of a radio frequency general knowledge. I wasn't an expert or anything, but enough to have a springboard so that when someone discusses biological systems and technical systems, I could kind of see how they integrate. Now, it did take me a minute to understand, how are you getting A connected to B? But once I did, and once I realized how in the 1980s or whatever they had pretty much done it. I'm born in 84. This dude is in 80. And what was the division of the Army that put the manual out in 1980 that says we have the ability to wirelessly, create diseases or fix all that stuff. That's when it started to be impressed upon me that I had to find a creative way to explain this to people and give them the benefit of the doubt that they are smart enough to figure it out, but just meet them where they're at. Because a
Right.
lot of people were not that technical, and I was only halfway that technical. I had to basically go back to college to learn upon some of these terms and concepts and things. So that video that my Maria posted and the comment engagement that we had was right. This is like the pinnacle of where I'm like, okay, you guys, we're there. All right, we're here. Like, it's time to talk about this. Let's talk. You want to talk? Let's talk. Because the more people who can understand how this works, especially who have microphones in front of them and who do a good job at articulating things and putting things together, it's just going to compound that much more into the public space where people will be able to have a fighting chance to know what's going on, especially when it comes to the blue beam thing. Cause I'm sitting there it's declassified now that they use this against some Afghanistan insurgents in the Afghanistan raid in '04 or whenever.
Yeah.
Allah says, put your guns down. They're like, oh, snap. Okay. Allah's right in the cloud. He said, let's do it. And then they talk about it. And then that was 20 years ago. So, we're there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting too. I think what's happened, like you said, trying to get it across to people in as easily digestible as possible, right? Because what's happened is all this information has come out and it's so fractured. Like you have the people that their thing is HARP and the weather manipulation. You have
Right.
people and their thing is the vaccine stuff, and then you have people that and their thing is the alien disclosure thing. And
Right.
they're it's so fractured amongst everyone, but they're
Mhm.
all related
Right.
to, like you said, coming back to this just where this tech has
Where
been
it
and
comes
where it's going, and we're just this big beta test for what's to come, essentially.
I agree.
If I could add to all those things that you talked about, like there are different areas and people do discuss them, but not a lot of people discuss the biofield, like the
You're
human
right.
and its connection to everything. And I think that's the thing from watching your, the documentary that you sent us to kind of preview, and looking at a couple of your other podcasts I've seen you on. That's a big part of everything. And I don't think it's discussed enough. Like people
You're
talk about chemtrails, HARP, you know what I mean? All that stuff. And people are open to that now, but they're not so open to the human biofield. So I think it's very important to get that out.
You're 100% right. And it, for me, was the big trigger that I was unaware of before, a handful of years ago. I never, like, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, do humans have an electric field? I would be like, I guess, like maybe, like, I mean, you put a defibrillator on someone when they flatline. So like maybe there's a magnetic electric relationship. Sure. Oh yeah. When I slide my feet across the carpet and shock my little brother, that's like static electricity, and magnetism is the inverse. Okay, yeah, sure. I would have kind of deduced, sure, but I would have never known. Yes, it's the primary function of what their R&D is all about. It's partially already running the internet through people since 2017. It is your immune system, basically, because it's the electrical input that governs the chemistry down the chain that becomes the enzymes that balance or imbalance your health. The way it's been made clear to me now is that if we're working in reverse order, the physical body exists as a, flesh body that we all kind of operate in, almost like a vehicle. Like your soul and your you-ness, if you will, is your soul or your spirit. And I don't get into the semantics on the details, but some aspect of that, which is distinct from your physical body. Anybody who's ever been to a funeral or seen someone in a casket has seen the difference between a uncle or auntie that ain't there versus when they were there. And then you have the chemical layer that that informs metabolic processes that happen in the physical layer. But then you have the electrical layer that informs which epigenetic expressions happen in the chemical layer that form the metabolic processes that affect the physical layer. And then you have the spiritual layer that influences the etheric surroundings to input the electrical layer, to then inform the chemical layer, to then inform the physical layer. And you can get into like mezzanine floors and like micro issues, but as a generalization, spiritual informs the electrical, which informs the chemical, which informs the physical. We all just are on the tail end of 100-year paradigm where they got rid of all that information and then sold you pharmaceuticals that work at the chemical layer, because they were petrochemical derivatives as side products for people who already had petrol operations going, textiles and the like. And you guys, I say this as a generalization because you guys probably are aware of this, but for anybody in the audience who might not be. So then the petrochemical industry leads into the chemical-based pharmaceutical industry, funded by the same people, Bayer, all these pharmaceutical companies that are the biggest ones today that were around 120 years ago, 150 years ago. And now I think that because all the R&D is done for what's the next forefront, if you will, of human control, which includes perception control and visual cortex control and audio cortex control customized to your religion and your language because Jesus loves you, then that's why we're seeing the allowance of the dissolution of this pharmaceutical. It's almost like the pharmaceutical white coat religion is on the same chopping block that Islam and Christianity is, from the gentleman's document you were reading and that previous podcast. I've been listening to it earlier today, so I'm talking like it's like fresh on my mind, but it's probably weeks ago for you guys. But we are now moving from the chemical layer manipulation strategy into the electrical layer manipulation strategy, which can also affect the chemical layer. So imagine my surprise when I find out that there are, healthcare services that you can pay a subscription for that will wirelessly manage your liver and pancreas so that you can party as hard as you want to. And so long as you got the money for that subscription fee, your glutathione is good, and they're wirelessly managing your entire GI tract and metabolic processes. Now, I do believe that an aspect of, we're going to put our intellectual property in you if you want us to do the service for you is going on, and you sign that contract and you ingest or inject that exchange. But when you guys are talking about the graphene and all the different elements, treating it very fairly as a general avenue that any of these things could be going on, the answer is all of those things are going on. They don't need any injections or nanotech to technically access your field because you emit electricity just with your heartbeat. But if you want to do it at broadband fiber optic giga speeds, you're going to need some sort of protocol exchange layer that's a bit more dialed in than what your human field is really designed to do because it's being used out of sequence. That was the big basic math with the spike protein for COVID. It was like, you guys, your red blood cells are designed to carry oxygen. What do you mean? We're just going to have them make a spike protein and carry that on the outside. And then your body will notice, and then you'll develop antibody titers for it. And then at some point, we think it'll stop. It was kind of like they're turning your cells into the manufacturer of the spike, and y'all don't really, nobody got anything to say but other than this is a conspiracy, like, come on now. It was kind of like failure to understand the mechanism of action, if you ask me, for many people. But what I believe that really did is it created an operating system, like a cybernetic, cyber physical operating system, an API. Are you familiar with what application programming? Okay, an API. Yeah. It basically was a biological API. Right. And the side effect was, your heart didn't really take, the nurse didn't aspirate that needle, sorry. The EMF was a bit strong in your area, so they coalesced a bit too quick with that clot. Sorry. It wasn't to kill, because like you said in that earlier episode, it seems like a sloppy and really expensive way to do it. They could just put in the water, it's like, come on. And it's boring. It's kind of like, I've been there, done that. They don't want to do that. They want to make you the quantum computer. And in my opinion, the quantum computers and I'm glad you know who Geordie Rose and D-Wave and all that is, but the quantum computers of what they're working on are stopgap technologies until this stuff, the Internet of Bodies, is ready. Because you are a better quantum computer than anything that D-Wave can pump out. And if you notice how the terminology about inner dimensions, computer daemons, computer demons, accessing 512 to the 512 dimension, parallel dimensions to do computate, to me, it's like grunt work for entities on the other side of some veil to do some basic rudimentary job, and they're selling it like quantum computing because it's just a branding term, right? All these are just linguistic brands. So you guys are tracking and hovering like right over the mark, like sharpshooting right on top of the target, like with everything you've been talking about. But the biofield, the fact that you are an electrical battery, and that if that battery has some extra synthetics in it, it might actually output a little faster than it would otherwise without those synthetics, especially if the rest of the system is based on those synthetics. And those synthetics are readily available from the trails in the sky to the water in the sink and everything in between. So the big driving impulse behind why I speak how I speak is because I think that if people were just given enough of a little bit of the bigger picture to kind of grasp onto and not just relegated to this impossible to understand thing, that they might just take the opportunity and time to go and research into this just enough to actually make smart decisions moving forward. And I maintain that, right? Even if you strap that thing straight in your arm because you thought that this new coronavirus was about to kill you, you still did it because you thought it was helpful. You were operating from a deceived point of view, but you still did it altruistically, not usually out of self-sabotage. So if people just had the right information, I think that they would make, wiser personal decisions. And I guess it's just kind of like, having worked in Hollywood, I understand enough about presentation to be like, okay, unless you just nobody's gonna pay attention. You gotta hi guys, the world's crashing. I'm Chicken Little. Am I though? But you gotta kind
Yeah.
of like make someone stop for a second, and that's just my style. So
Yeah, no, for sure. And I will speak to, as someone who's seen the documentary or part one of it so far, the production value is like out of this world, man. It's
thanks,
so
man.
good.
Thank you.
So and like I when I was watching it, that was the first thing that came to mind is I was like, this is gonna hit. Like this is
Thanks.
a way to actually get this information across that isn't, some schizo guy on the internet,
Right, exactly. And you almost have to do that. You have to be like, "Am I the schizo guy? I'm not, but am I? But have you heard this thing? Would a schizo guy make this much sense? Not as you think." You have to kind of play with people's. Is he serious? Is he? What? Wait, hold on. Is that true? And what
Yeah.
my plan is that when this documentary is released, there is what I'm calling the nerd layer that I'm going to be releasing alongside the map. So you can already download the actual map, but the nerd layer is actually very meticulously planned out series of links and references that back up everything that I'm saying for people who are actually serious about being like, wait, is this really going on? Where can I learn about this other than this whimsical documentary series?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want to back it up with like, hey, y'all go make up your own minds, but don't pretend like I just made this up. Like, look at the Department of Defense say it, and then
Right.
tell me it's a conspiracy because I'm reading this from nano.gov. So I don't want to hear no like conspiracy blog. I don't put no conspiracy blogs on here. This is nano.gov. So you tell me why what the government says is wrong, and then we can continue. I want to hit people with like, I'm silly, but like this information is actually pretty serious because I just think comedy is kind of basically it's the last bluff. It's the last grease, it's the last KY or whatever,
Yeah.
thing to soften the situation.
Yeah, man.
But go ahead.
Oh, well, so I wanted to ask you because obviously, like, I've noticed that the Psyop or the conspiracy world has become so mainstream, and this whole narrative of exiting the Matrix, is like,
Right.
I mean, how many people have built courses around it and sold
Right.
books around it and stuff, right? So,
Still stuck in the Matrix.
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, doing it on a meta platform, but so what's your take on that then? Like, is that did they see this coming and so they're just trying to co-opt this ahead of time and fracture the movement before it actually picks up steam, or what's going on with that?
So good observation and good question. So my short answer is yes, but the analogy that I'll give you is imagine you're a baker and you're about to move your cookies that have some sort of leaven, some rising aspect to them from the small oven into the big oven. And you got like 100 million cookies on this tray. You know that because of how quickly you need to move the cookies across to this new oven, this new paradigm of thinking, you're going to lose some cookies. But the goal is to just minimize the loss of cookies. You want to destroy your old paradigm. Same thing the guy in that letter was saying, break the Christian, break the Muslim, break the atheist, just like they said in 1871, the Pike de Mazzini letter. And then they want to introduce a new paradigm, but they want to lose as few people in the crossover as possible. And I think that it's part game theory and strategy, and it's part reaction in sports, meaning you practice the moves. Drumming is the same thing, live music. You know the song patterns. The live show comes, the bassist needs to tune up, the guitarist is like doing a line back on stage. You got to do a solo, the click track's off. You just have to improvise and make it work. And I think that is what we're seeing when it comes to them getting ahead of the narrative. They are overhyping conspiracy to make conspiracy a caricature. They are redefining the word in real time to conspire. Technically, this podcast is a conspiracy because two people decided, hey, let's talk to this other guy. And then when they did that, that conversation turned into a decision to record and plan a meeting to actually have a live recording. So they're redefining what it means, and they're giving you the bottom 1% of the most outrageous takes on true things as a means to just blow the incredulity threshold. That's what I call it. The threshold of the normie that's willing to go along with what you're saying right up to a certain point of where it's too incredulous for them to believe based on their present worldview is what I refer to as the incredulity threshold. So NASA is great at like breaking people's incredulity threshold. Like the moon landing is a great example. It's like, of course we did it because there's no way they could fake that. It's too crazy to think that this many people could lie that long because they don't really know how they structure the lie. You know, it doesn't take all of NASA to be in on it. It takes like 10 people at the top and a team off to the side and maybe some fancy forget-me-not technology, some Men in Black flashy thingy. And before you know it, you have a whole lie and, you know, corporate culture and, you know, Jimmy knows too much, so let's just give him a heart attack. You know, there's all kinds of things going on as to why 30 or 50 people might actually know. And the other 100,000 people that work at that company was all the yes men and the groomed, and they drank the Kool-Aid to even get hired there in the first place. So the last thing they think is that their life's biggest achievement that gives them all the cool points in their social circles is pulling the wool over everyone. It's psychology 101, Stockholm gang theory, you know, same thing. It's just past the incredulity layer. Like, there's no way. And then they're like, yeah, exactly. There's no way. All right, let's keep doing it. And so I've learned that, you know, you tell your bigger lie and that's how you do it. So I see now that the conspiracy conversation is bleeding into the obvious. This means too many cookies are falling off the tray on the transition. And they're like, oh shit, get the net out here. And the catch net is the QAnon conspiracy theory has come across, blah, 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 blah. And so they create Q, and then they create counter Q, and then they use Q's antics about a few true things to point at the hypocrisy of the conspiracy crowd. And then they protract any sort of further disclosure a decade. The Pizzagate to Epstein thing is a great example. Yeah. I'm old enough in this conspiracy community to remember when Epstein files weren't a thing and Pizzagate was the same exact thing for the Democratic side of the table and nobody wanted to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And they was trying to elect Hillary in the States anyway, and a whole slew of Democratic leaning politicians, and nobody was interested in talking about it. And then 10 years later, what you see was that the QAnon conversation that got that started stymied it from the beginning. It paid attention to who all was talking about it, so it created feeder grid isolated IP address buckets of who's really paying attention and who's not. Then it was about placating them to make sure they know that when we go one, we go all, and that somebody else is coming to stop this. They don't need to do anything. And then the faithful stuck around just long enough to get spun up into a Tasmanian devil dust storm of their own thinking when you really find out it was an AI this whole time, managed by some of the very people that are the heroes of the story. General Flynn and Donald Trump and all these people was managing that the whole time. And no, you know, go figure, right? But it's not like they weren't disclosed. It's not like that thing wasn't true. Like almost everything that Q is essentially disclosing was actually true. But if you were smart, you would have known that before Q ever popped on the scene. Not smart. I don't want to make it about smarts, but if you read the right if you're paying attention in the right ways and the spirit of discernment is activating in you, out circumventing the QAnon phenomenon, you would have seen all that same stuff and more. And then you would have realized, like I did, hold on now, Q talks about MK Ultra, but they don't really talk about the whole aspect of MK Ultra. They don't really talk about how they talk about it, but it's like MK Ultra, MK Ultra, MK Ultra. See what I'm saying? It's like flooding the conversation with MK Ultra, MK Ultra. So you never really get into the bottom of, okay, but like it had 3 sub projects, 3 main categories. One was for war and, you know, removal of inhibition around killing, removal of inhibition around sex, and then the complete like dissolution from one's physical body for astral espionage and all this extra stuff going on. But it's like y'all are just oversimplifying it. And the oversimplification to me is the perfect stalemate. It's like having the great judge finally enter the courtroom, but he's a sloth. Well, let's get to the bottom of this. And you're like, come on, bro. Like, meanwhile, they're rolling the shit out. Like, come on.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is happening, is that they say, okay, too many cookies are falling off the tray. Let's do some damage control. And the damage control is take 10 of the hottest, most caught on ones and then crank them to the maximum so that you further divide all the people over here who ain't trying to buy it. And then the people over here either go hard in the paint or they go, yeah, bro, I don't know, man. I used to be into all that conspiracy shit, but man, it turns around, just like, it just turned around and made me really depressed. So I gave up all that crap, man. All right. That was a successful psyop. The obsessed guy is a successful psyop. The fearful prepper is a successful psyop. The normie that's like, I don't got time for this, that's a successful psyop. So I guess that would be how I'd answer that. It's like, they know and they planned for it, but they probably, it's hard to say if they imagined this much, because I think since I've been in this subculture for over a decade, I have a hard time figuring out who all is really awake in the real world. But based on that last pandemic, bro, I don't know. I was let down. I had more faith in humanity than the number that came up on the scoreboard.
Yeah, me as well. And I agree with you about Q 100%. Also, I think that the people that I knew that fell in the whole QAnon thing were the people I think that would have made the biggest fuss, like even bigger than me. I was pretty tuned in and angry about everything, but the people that were the Q heads, they were the ones who had stockpiled stuff, and you know what I mean? They would have made problems.
They was ready to go.
And then they, like, even still today, they're all like, oh, it's the white hats. We're all good. It's Donald Trump's going to save us. Like, no joke. Still to this day,
you're right. And that's a perfect segue and dovetail to this Internet of Bodies, because I believe, it is my firm belief, now this I can't prove, but based on everything and everyone I talked to and everything I learned, my hunch is that the Q crowd is the perfect crowd for this bio-cybernetic thing. And the reason I say that is because Trump and that whole anti-Soros, anti-globalist thing, like put globalists and blue, New York Democrats over here, and then put rich ranchers and like highfalutin fly boys and like, we're Republican, but we're gayer than ever, put them over here. And then these guys are just ratting on these guys. That's all that's happening. It's like, it wasn't lies. Pizzagate wasn't a lie. The Epstein things weren't a lie. It wasn't a hoax. It wasn't a Democratic hoax any more than Pizzagate was a Republican hoax or a Russian hoax. It's simply that not everyone is vying. It's like scoundrels vying for the final musical chair as the music stops on this current paradigm. And so, yeah, it's kind of like the Q thing to me represents we're trying to mind control people in this new way. And this white hat conversation it's like this savior incubator thing. And I think that there's some cybernetic override. I think I'm allegorizing here, but if somebody said that there was some military base that was linked to the Q computer that has some direct, persistent override, like, all right, they're in the queue. Okay, drip the where we go on every 8 seconds. That just gets wirelessly sent to the head. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. I can't say that I've ever heard or read or seen that. It's just like, it's what they do. And this technocratic group, this like quasi General Flynn, General Dunford, that whole like restore the republic conversation, that crowd mixed with the Trump and, what's happening over in the Middle East crowd, the hexagram, as I refer to them, that is the tech crowd. Those are the technocrats. That's why people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos align with them. That's why SpaceX can take over NASA so seamlessly. You just blink and it's like, oh, wait, SpaceX is now NASA? Because they're the same endeavor. And no, it doesn't have anything with planets far, far away. It has everything to do with internet dimensions. And the simplest allegory I could give is your brain synapses are the outer space. They are creating this, I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, like little children. I notice when I'm looking at most kids' cartoons, like literally almost all of them have some space related episode. And I realized dinosaurs, space, And any animal that's not real, like a unicorn or a butterfly that shows up 2 weeks out of the year, or some sort of like, pixie or something, nothing real,
Mhm.
and space and dinosaurs. That's it. Like every single cartoon, every episode, some kid's got a dinosaur shirt or a rocket ship shirt, or something related to space. And I realized I think I understand why now. The priming is always about the expanse and this whole you only use 10% of your mind. But the only lie was that it's a rocket ship 8 miles away, light years. They might redefine light year to mean like one synapse to the next synapse inside your mind in your consciousness space, thanks to 4D space time. And, all these, they just create a bunch of fake words and sell the marketing team. And then they sell you on the same thing Black Mirror was telling us was right around the corner 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Put the little dot on your forehead, you sitting on your couch, and you are in Mars as far as your consciousness is concerned, because they finally disclosed that your field is electric. You aren't your body. Transhuman is really just an ideological decoupling from that. It's like the step into like, you could be man or girl, or you could be anything, honey. You could be a bear, a doorstop, a broom. You could be anything. You could be a unicorn, a butterfly, a dragon. You pick a day of the week. Just pay us the monthly subscription fee. Or you got to be your own biology. And because we made synthetic biology already from last year, that was version 1. Right now, we don't revert back to version 1. So you got to keep paying this fee, or your liver stops working and your butt cheek shrivels. One of them, anyway. So that's where I honestly, it sounds facetious, but I really do think we're heading toward this zone where, just like the gentleman was saying, this we get awakened back to the spiritual reality of everybody, but it's networked. There's an intermediate and it's got some serial number on it, and you're part of some IP as opposed to the natural ability. Because I think that will happen too. Natural telekinesis, natural this, people taking the discipline, people eating clean, and then other people being like, oh, fuck it, I'm just pay the fee. I want it. Give it to me now.
Yep.
And then you'll have one guy doing that and 2 guys doing this, and then 2 guys doing that and 12 guys doing this, and then 5 guys doing this and 5,700 guys doing this. And just like the gentleman stated, that, plasmonic, etheric, networked reality will be true. But it's not because it's invented by NASA or Elon Musk. It's because it was always a part of the natural electromagnetic reality the whole time, just redacted.
Yeah.
Integrated into, systems built up for it, an API built to integrate you into it. All of it's promoted under false pretenses. None of it's just to kill you, because that's silly and boring. And here we are. We're there. 5 years ago, they deployed that phase of it.
Right. I kind of tied all this together with sort of the expansion of the whole like new age belief system as well. Like
Mhm.
I started like hearing, terms like ascension and
See what I'm saying?
yeah, and the whole 5D Earth and bifurcation, and what you're saying really makes a lot of sense with that. Where it's like, yeah, if that were to happen, that's how it would be perceived: is that you have these ascended individuals that are able to access this, and the ones that are left behind were existing in the same
Exactly.
reality, right? But some are living in this, Neuralink, like quantum expansion model, and some are, analog.
Exactly. And I
Yeah,
think that there's a subcultures of people who like to be analog.
yeah,
And then there's other subcultures of people who are like, this analog shit sucked, man. I wish I had enough money to afford that shit. And then there's other subcultures of people that are like, listen, my work wants me to be digital. I don't necessarily love it, but it's what it is. I got to provide. And then there's other people that are like, give me the latest, give me the updates. Hit me, hit me, hit me. I want to be like Tron. I want to be like Blade Runner.
yeah,
And I think they're going to hit people at their vanities. I've had a lot of musings with friends where I'm like, do you know a single guy on earth, any male, any one of your friends, that if some tech, like if a Elon Musk type said, hey, listen, bro, we have tapped into the human physiolome, the human physiology layer at the electric level. You give us some of your stem cells, you give us permission, we can grow an extra inch down there, maybe an extra 2. You want some hair, you want to remove some hair. You want to sing better, you want to jump higher, you want to shoot sharper. What you want? You fucked up in the 80s and 90s. Well, we got you, bro. We can restore that. Oh, you have a bad memory. You had loss of a loved one. We got that too. We can suppress sadness. Get off all those SSRIs and benzos. Those are harming you. Take our non-invasive. You don't even have to actually ingest anything. We can just sign right here. We can do it all wireless. It takes a little longer, but hey, you're holistic. Okay, fine. You see what I'm saying? That's where they're headed. And once you hit people at their vanity, you blame Ozempic and all the weight loss regimen, and then you offer them wireless weight loss.
Mhm.
You like hit people at their porn vanity and their, body image weaknesses and things like that. It's like, and that's already like beginning to be accepted because all the celebrities are doing it. And you find that this is why half of them look as young as they look. And they've been doing this whole time.
Yeah.
They were part of the trial phase of it, but yeah, I think we're there. And I think that as long as people don't know that this is even possible, it's like they're sitting ducks.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I want to get into sort of the like voice to skull part of it,
Mhm.
because that's, obviously you can market things to people like we see, we were just talking about the what essentially is like the whole peptide craze right now,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh my goodness. There's
And
everything
that's,
now.
yeah, and that's sort of like a soft rollout of this, like you said, but obviously it'll get to a point where, yeah, you don't need to stick this needle in your ass anymore. You can just, we'll do the upload kind of thing.
They can
But
technically do it. I think there's a lot of permission involved. I think they really need you to kind of like free will yourself into it.
yeah,
See what I'm
but
saying?
that's where I kind of like, I'm confused about the voice to skull thing, because with that, to me, that sort of like crosses that free will barrier. They don't need
Right.
that permission anymore.
Well, you're right. But here's the thing. So I think it's a great question because I've thought a lot about this too, and I didn't know what I thought until relatively recently. So I I think just like in sports and just like in law, there's the rules and there's people who break the rules. And then there's consequences to breaking the rules. And then there's enforcement of those consequences. And there's like 4 different layers to this. My hunch is that the rules of the cosmos are that you can't slash shouldn't slash can't do it without karmic retribution impede on someone else's free will. I think they do it all the time and they incur the karmic retribution, or they incur the spiritual referees being like, no, you can't do that. I think what people don't understand is that when you become a citizen of any modern UN recognized nation state, which since basically around the 1900s has turned into a corporate, it's almost like Pfizer. You might as well say Pfizer. I use Pfizer because they're a private company and everybody understands them as a pharmaceutical company engaged in practices beyond what they claim. I just never realized until relatively recently that the US and the Canadian federal government is the same thing. The
Mm.
Republic, well, see, I'm not as up on the Canadian politics. I know it parallels very heavily with the American in the same general, but in the specifics is where I'm not as versed. But in America, the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Yeah, that was put on the shelf with a contract in 1871 that said, hey, how about y'all do the fiduciary duties of the American estates instead of the republic trustees, the corporate trustees. The 14th Amendment was created. The whole bang kind of took off from there. And there's this whole government behind the government. Yeah, we call it the shadow government, but I don't mean from a conspiracy standpoint. I mean from a paperwork, legally. When you sign that birth certificate, you are signing that Pfizer contract with this big bank that has genetic eugenics in mind. So your mother already gave them permission to do what seems like they're overstepping their free will bounds doing. We just weren't really told that that ever happened 38 years ago, 41 years ago. So I think that the referees are like, hey, listen, you gotta, you need a second form of permission, even though you got a head start, but you can't just hit them A to Z. they still require participation. And I think it's how the quote unquote evil, if you will, for using just basic concepts, it's how they stay out of foul trouble, if you will, if you're really trying to win this battle versus good and evil. Because I really do think that balance is the ultimate ruler. And if we want to call that God, that's fine by me, because I do believe in God. I think that in order for me to experience love and to see love in the form of my child, I can't pretend like I generated that feeling. And I have to recognize it comes from somewhere up the chain. And because I have enough of it, and my parents found it to create me, and their parents found it to create them, I have to trust that somewhere up that chain in that Russian doll motif is something loving and something creative. And so I try not to like, I'm pretty open to anybody's interpretation of that, as far as, how, I don't really get into it with people, but I truly do believe that God gives people what they can handle. And some people can handle the truth at certain points of their life, and some people can't. And I just was given this series of perspectives that help me articulate it in this way that I think may be helpful, but I try.
Oh, I think it's very helpful.
Oh, yeah.
And I really enjoy how you tie certain aspect, like in your documentary and on the map, if people download it and they can see how you have the 8, the banking, central banking, or banking in the center, the 8 kind of shades of the pie, or piece of the pie, sorry, but also how you have them offset so they're connected. And one of the ones you have religion on one end and entertainment on the other, right? And growing up in the 80s, like religion and entertainment were arch enemies. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
what it was portrayed. That's how I always thought. That's how
Yeah, me too.
was
Me
raised,
too.
right? I had no idea how much they work in concert together. Can you expand on that a little bit? And
Yeah,
also, if you
absolutely.
could throw in how sports fits in, because
Yeah.
it must fit in with entertainment, I would assume. And as a massive sports fan for a long time, I haven't watched any for 5 or 6 years, because I realized the illusion of the, the
Yeah.
bread and
Yeah.
circuses act. And
Mhm.
yeah, sorry. So yeah, could you expand on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in the documentary, if you haven't seen it, we'll have the link available. But in the documentary, the aim is to say, you guys, if any one of these 8 things is of any interest to you, if it's adjacent to you, if you've ever heard anything about any shady stuff going on, trust me, the other 7 got the same amount of shady stuff. And I have worked in or around enough of these, not fully, but enough, because working in entertainment, I'm like filming for some of the biggest pastors. I'm like doing Billy Graham's birthday video. Biggest, his 90th birthday video, I edited that. I'm working with Stephen Furtick at Elevation Church. Like I didn't ever went there, but I filmed with him on specific occasions. So I'm getting these front row seats to entertainment, to the pastoral and the religious industry side of things, to I'm doing video work for law firms, and they're just like schooling me on like total behind the clothes, not like secrets, but just like trade secrets, like industry secrets. Like, hey, most people don't know this, but this is really how this works. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, hold on. And I'm not having to get a Juris Doctor's degree. I'm just a good visual storyteller. So I get hired by these different sectors. I'm working for this production company doing a series of commercials for Google early in my career. And one of the companies was called Google Ventures at the time. And Google Ventures had just it was their venture capital division of Google. And they had just invested in 10 corporations, one of which was 23andMe. So I'm sitting there talking to the late CEO of that company, just like I'm talking to you, but face to face. And I'm like greener than anything. I don't know anything about anything at the time, but it's like my experience has just put me in these observer, spectator, behind the camera situations, off camera, sitting in the green room, working with certain celebrities or around them. And then having done commercial work for politicians, like people who are in politics today, like again, just marketing stuff. And I was never in politics, but I do video stuff. And it gave me the way I articulate it. And it helped that, to me, religion and entertainment serve the same function. And that function is a form of identity and energy siphoning. It's to say that and again, when I present this for any of your audience, I have no beef with Christians, no beef with Muslims, no beef with atheists, agnostics, Hindus, Taoists, Taoists, flying spaghetti monsterists. No, nobody. I just learned that the institutional corporate aspects of all of these religions on a drop-down menu have the same back funding as the same engine. I'm listening to one of the early whistleblowers from the 80s, a guy named John Todd. Many people have heard of him, many people haven't. It's either like you totally have and you're like, he's the OG, or you totally haven't because you just missed him. But John Todd is talking about how he's the president of Zodiac Records, the record label that owned Motown, RCA, and this one other label, and how he wrote the check to start Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa because it was this whole Illuminati situation going on, and he was just at the record label business, but he had the pen to sign the checks for other endeavors that weren't directly tied to the record label business. And he's 30 years removed from that, talking about it, and I'm greener than green, and I'm going, I work in this. I've been to them. I work with him. Hold on, let me drive. I'm in LA. I'm gonna drive down to Costa Mesa and check this Calvary Chapel out myself. So I'm catching the story from all these crazy different angles. And again, I don't claim to have any trade secrets or any sort of like special classified anything. I just have the ability to present what I think is happening in my mind. So to answer your question, the religious industry is based on touring and seats in chairs. It's the same thing as sporting arenas. How does a modern day football team or basketball team or hockey team, if you're in Canada, or curling team, how do they make their money? Ticket sales, merch sales, television broadcast deals. But I would say those are probably the biggest three. Ticket sales in the event arena, then they're selling to vendors for a spot to sell you hot dogs and stuff like that, and parking lot people and all that stuff. And then merch while you're there. It's like a $50 t-shirt for the Canada Wayne Gretzky and them. And you find, the autograph one is like 150, right? But you find that churches and religious institutions in general have the same function. Now, they will claim that they're there for different reasons. And again, I split this across certain sports clubs whose owners really love sports versus other sports clubs whose owners just want to make a buck and couldn't care less about the sports or the athletes. Certain pastors who really do believe that they're there to help their community and who try, and in many cases who actually do help the community. Other pastors who are like, hey, I'm about to get this buck, holla at these shorties. Oh, yes, for the Lord. Of course, for the Lord. Both of them exist. So I'm not blanketing your pastor, your governor, in any specific. I'm just trying to illustrate to people from a systems standpoint, religion, like the same terminology is used. Like, oh my gosh, Beyonce has a cult following. Justin Bieber has a cult following. Cults are religions, not customers to a product of Interscope Records or Universal Records or whatever. But the terminology overlaps. The experiences overlap. You go to these arenas where an individual's on stage and money is given in the form of ticket sales or tithes, and social camaraderie is created, and the people go home this week until next Monday night football or next Tuesday night hockey or next Wednesday night, whatever the sport. And I think what happens is it creates necessary norms. It creates these, maybe we'll call them inverse tornadoes, where the skinny part is at the top and the fat part's at the bottom. But it's these forces of wind that that beg for your attention, culturally speaking. Oh, what church do you go to? Oh, you don't go to church? Oh, you sure you don't want to? Right? Oh, are you gonna watch the game tonight? Oh, why didn't I? Come on, man, you don't want to watch the game? See what I'm saying? It's like nobody cares if you go to the library tonight. It's not part of that cultural cyclone. Nobody cares if you go to the laundromat versus doing your laundry. It's not part of the cultural cyclone. They create these cultural cyclones to inject control air into, because they're inverse tornadoes. The small amount of control is all the power is at the top. and all the effect, the giant footprint is at the bottom, kind of opposite of a normal tornado. And I believe that we now live in a world where people consume their religion, especially since COVID. They consume every aspect of their church or spiritual experience in the same way that we consume entertainment. It's a la carte. It's not in any sort of devotional sense. There's no prayer closet or shrine or temple. There's no sacred space. It's like in the car. It's wherever. It's I was feeling like I didn't want to fight traffic this morning, so I'll watch the sermon online. It has all the same trappings as the entertainment industry. And at the end of the day, I think that they're destroying it very similar to the way that they've kind of built up this, the American motif. I do realize Canada is a little different, but I do see them as very related because the same people that own America own Canada, Australia, Great Britain, Wales, Scotland, and England. And as far as I've been told, all U.S. National currency, sorry, not U.S., all national currencies get traded on the market of British commercial paper, meaning mother, the mother hen, if you will, and the great queen, and now the great king, they do rule the roost as far as the banking layer goes. And that's why it all connects. Because when you find out that no Hollywood that Hollywood scripts go through a Department of Defense approval layer before they're out, and that pastors make TV deals that are rivaling like secular conversation, like non-religious deals that are like less lucrative than the pastor's deal. You realize it's money to be made, and everybody's open for business. The Department of Defense, the government, Trudeau and them, everybody. Katy Perry and Trudeau. What a better combo than that, boy! Oh man, Justin Trudeau trying to level up in the public sphere. Katie trying to get taken more serious. It works. But if you ask me, I'm not trying to like knock on the Canadian audience because I would make the same exact thing about the American president. But if you ask me, Trudeau and Katie represent augmented humans, people on this new tech side of where things are headed. We're done with the clones and the cryptids. They about to release some aliens. Oh yeah. All that projects from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s we've been storing this whole time. We about to open the door and just let it all go and tell you it came from Mars. And I know I'm jumping around, but the reason, imagine like, take the UFO crowd, for instance. You could say that there's a UFO religion. Like if Jesus Christ showed up like a gray alien and straight up healed a guy's arm and like made the blind see with some like cybernetic technology override, or they had, specifically been targeting this person with suppression their whole life just to remove the suppression. So their sight is actually natural. It's like a very easy miracle if you're 100 years planned into this. And you wouldn't have to do anything but add it to the drop-down menu to make alienism, if you will, a new religion. So that's why, even though it's science fiction, it's all this, it's on the opposite sides of this map, because the religions, and you guys touched on this in the Bluebeam episode. I heard that part. You said what they're planning on doing is taking this alien psyop past a certain point to where people don't really know what I forget how you were reading the gentleman's 4 different phases of the rollout or something like that.
Oh, Serge Manasse. Yeah.
Manasse, exactly.
Yeah.
And the point that the Manasse kept trying to make is that, hey, like they're rolling this out in stages, but one of the stages involves destroying the religious ideals. That is directly tied to the entertainment and science fiction, because everyone's primed for that destruction through the entertainment sector. Even though you're right, they were at odds from where I grew up in the 80s and 90s. It was like, oh, that's of the devil. We don't watch that stuff. We watch holy, right, Jesus stuff. God is the God of this world. We don't get no time for the devil. Meanwhile, he's been tinkering in your field with his quantum computers, him and Geordie Rose this whole time. But that's why I ultimately pit the two. And sports I put in to the same category as it's like it's the new form of gladiator. It's the kind of I would say it's like if I hate to be crass, so I'm not normally a crass person. I'm gonna use this analogy because it's just dudes here.
Crass
If
is okay.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
if porn is like the backside, you're not supposed to watch this, but a lot of people are still addicted to it. I don't watch it. I'm not addicted, but I'm just saying as a generalization. Then sports is like the front side version of that. See what I'm saying? It's like
Mhm.
the same thing, but without the negative stigma, without the "ooh, you're a low life." We don't really like what you're about if we know that you're doing that, even though 90% of there's probably a Venn diagram overlap between those two crowds that's larger than people would care to admit. So that's why I think sports is like I'm the type of dude who just like you, I don't just like you, I don't watch sports on the regular. But I do enjoy a game if it's on and a bunch of people are over and I just happen to be there. I don't like I watch it now and I'm kind of like, huh, I wonder if the athletes know how futile this is because I maintain that maybe the top 2 or 3 superstars on the team and the head coach and the managers do, but the rest of the team doesn't. They're just playing a job. They're just working a job and they don't honestly know how rigged it is. And then sometimes they figure it out in real time. Because I've heard enough NFL players come to the awareness that I mean they were famous, but they weren't the superstars on their team at the time, and they came to the awareness later, like they're throwing these games. Like I didn't
Mhm.
know how at first, but then I saw it because it's not as obvious. Because to me, the trick isn't about getting a meeting of 100 people and say, everybody sign this pact to lie to everybody. The trick is about creating a false paradigm of how something works and then tricking one person and having like 10 people be involved in tricking one person and all cameras and supporting staff are focused on that one person. So that one person's life is a hot mess that we're all just watching. And the circle of honeybee worker bees around them are just as clued as everybody on the outside. And then there's a handler or a relative or a agent or someone in the mix that's overseeing the bigger use of a particular celebrity or in many cases politician.
Mhm.
But that's I guess why I pit those two is that thematically they serve the same function, religion, and they serve complementary functions, the religious industry and the entertainment industry. Because for every atheist who's obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons, they got them too. And for every holier than thou who would never ever dream of watching anything other than the Christian, godly, angel TV and the Chosen and the Mormons and all them, they got something for y'all too. Everybody's
Mhm.
got a trick. Like nobody's left off the trick bag. So subculturally speaking.
Yeah, and it really is sort of the useful idiot thing, right? Where you have, because like you said, it's like, yeah, you have the star player in his life. He's in the spotlight, but you also have the bench sitter who's like, well, I could be the bench sitter or I could work at Jiffy Lube. I'd still rather be the bench sitter. I can, I'm not really playing a big role in this, but I'm here, you
Right.
know? And I think that happens a lot with even like you said, like with the comparing a concert to a sermon, like it's this like culture of we. I
Yeah,
always thought that was
exactly.
strange where people be like, "Oh, we did you watch the game? We won." Like, well,
Exactly.
you didn't
You
win
don't even live
anything.
in New York. You talking about the Knicks won, we won.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is this culture of we, but I think people want to belong. I think that they dissolve the family unit and the community unit and they create false units and they have to create these replacement units. And that's the function of all these industries. And then they happen to also be nice little money grabs at the same time. I mean, the
Yeah.
NFL and NBA make crazy money. They make great money. So yeah, I agree.
It's interesting to see how much compartmentalization plays a role in pretty much everything. Like your whole circle, like you were just talking about it there, right? A few people at the top kind of know what's going on, but even they don't fully know what's
Fully
going
know.
on. And the useful idiots, like they they know their task or their one little job and have no idea of the big picture
of things
that's
going
going on. Yeah. Do you see some way to can that be combated? Can that be fixed, change, or is that just the way it is and has always been and will continue to be?
I think it's the way it is, and I would liken it to surfing and waves. Meaning, are there machines and electromagnetic phenomena that can redirect the waves? Yeah, maybe not for the whole ocean, but in localized areas. Is that an easier task for the average Joe than just figuring out how to surf?
Hmm.
That's like an
Yeah.
analogous way I would answer that, because I don't actually think that I'm practical, man. I don't think you can change government, but I also don't think you need to change government. I think that once you realize that government is about governing the mental, and it's really just this insurance policy against you living and taking control of your own life, and you realize that not only did your great grandparents, but basically most of antiquity had to live under this or acquiesce to some tyrannical government, whether it was Rome, Media Persia, Babylon, Egypt. It doesn't matter which great empire, they all oppressed and enslaved and subjugated. Whether you're talking Westeros or Essos, Daenerys Targaryen or Baratheon or the doggone Tyrell family or the any of them. They were all oppressive at the end of the day, the Lannister family, any of them. So I think that I'm not an anarchist. I'm not like a overthrow the government. I just think that, like, I look at Americans and I go, they're so polarized about Donald Trump in particular. Like, you love the dude or you hate the dude, but it's like one of the two. I want to live in a way where Donald Trump doesn't matter to my life, because I don't trust this dude. I don't know this dude personally. I don't trust him. A handful of people who I know who do know him, half of them don't trust him. It's like I don't. His fruits don't seem righteous to me, So I just go. I don't need to blow hot air into the microphone and say we need to change something. We need to storm the Capitol. Look how well that worked. It didn't work at all. The Capitol. It was fake Psyop, if you ask me, but it also was hot, like a bully move. It was like, yeah, try to storm us and see how much we lay down the hammer on you. Because real people got in trouble through the psyop. But I think that putting yourself in a place where you don't need to pay attention or worry about him affirmatively or negatively is really the goal for me. So that's kind of like why I answered the question the way I did, is because I'm going, compartmentalization is a problem, but it's like the way that the strata of the fabric of the thing we're all living in was set up was compartmentalized. It would be almost like, how can we get all these ants on the same picture about what's going on in this colony? The ants have this special way of communicating, but if humans were lived in an ant colony, which is all compartmentalized, I don't know that the answer is to break down the walls of the ant colony. I think it's to get out of the colony and like hop in a bucket or something, or just some other thing that doesn't involve breaking or challenging the compartmentalized nature of the structure, because I think it's just built into the foundation, of the way that this country's work. I think that they want to sell us on the idea that we're now leaving that by this decentralized blockchain based thing. I just think that that's just marketing.
Mhm.
They're not leaving. They keeping everything just as compartmentalized as it's always been, just with new terms and new buckets of what's mashed together and what isn't.
Yeah, I think it's easier said than done in a
Mhm.
lot of areas, right? Because like when it comes to politics, I'm the same as you. Like I'm not I'm probably not not probably. I'm not going to vote again because I know
Me
how that
neither.
works
Yeah,
and
me
where
neither.
but when it comes to something, more day to day real life, like say like the food industry
Mhm.
or pharmaceuticals, let's just call it health you know people are gonna people break their legs, people need to go to the
Sure, yeah.
hospital, people need to utilize these services, and everyone needs to eat.
Mhm.
how do we how do we combat it in something that isn't so much thought driven?
Sure, like practically driven.
Yeah.
So, great, another good question. I am a solutions person. But I tell people quite often, as I've been now speaking about this publicly, maybe a year or two, the solution is only as good as the problem that we understand. So I have some good answers for your question that I will share here in just a second, but I'm always trying to couch that with, you guys, they're hitting us from like 15 different angles with a bunch of tech people haven't heard of. I'm going to give you best practices and I'm going to give you what I've learned, but I can't promise that that's blocking all 15 angles forever and ever. Amen. I just think it's the more we can understand the Bruce Lee moves, the more we can dodge it, because I used to be a bit overwhelmed with what I was learning. Like, okay, this is clicking, unfortunately. So now what do I do about this? Because this is scary, like, how do I stop this? I don't want this. And what I found was that because this biofield of yours is basically a body part, it is the body part that governs your sixth sense. And so because of that, it's almost like if ants or fleas are on your shoulder, how do you get them off your shoulder? You just kind of brush them, you flick them, you put the spray on, there's like 5 or 6 ways you can stop some other autonomous sentient thing from landing on you. And I think that the ultimate answer is kind of adjacent to that as far as the field is concerned. These electromagnetic systems are actually physically attenuating to you. And if you're sensitive enough and you're familiar with what it feels like, you can feel when it happens. So you push it off, you block it, you establish it in the field in your intention. You change your posture when you're, stand up or sit down or lie down or kind of squat. And the way that the systems are built are designed to kind of like re-engage when posture is changed. So there's all kinds of, again, that's not like a magic button, but it's little baby steps to keep in your back pocket of, okay, now that I'm beginning to understand how this works, now I can start to move a bit smoothly. So in terms of practical answers for your food and your healthcare, what I'm finding and what I found that's been very encouraging, even though it's discouraging news at first, is that most of the elite and the people who knew what was up this whole time were using homeopathic remedies, like this concept of homeopathy, frequency manipulation at the natural, organic, or in some cases synthetic, not synthetic, but like analog machinery, infusing the frequency into water or glycerin or some paste or something. So we're dealing in an energy war. And I'm not asking everybody to go become a computer engineer tomorrow. I'm just saying, as I've started to explore, okay, what can we do about this? I'm finding the conversation of certain people who do deal in radio frequency radionics, spectroscopy, kind of like this, I won't say woo-woo, but this kind of like left back corner of the field of homeopathy. That's not just the flower tinctures and the natural organic stuff, but that's more like dialed in homeopathy. That's a whole new paradigm that I'm actually starting a project with a friend who I met not that long ago, who's been doing this for 15, 20 years. But what I'm finding is that there is mitigation strategies. It's just, it requires treating your body more like a battery and an electrical thing than anything else, meaning your diet. If you can grow your own food, great. But if you can't, smart choices with what you're eating. Certain brands that we know are affiliated with this agenda versus other brands that aren't. Local co-ops. I'm vegetarian, but for people who aren't, butchers or farmers or people who sell you stuff on the local tip versus the industrialized tip. Lack of preservatives. Going more raw. I'm not asking, again, I'm speaking just from my perspective, but I don't imagine people want to just swap their diet overnight. But the point is, malnutrition is a foundational aspect of what it is that they need, because ultimately, if you're going to be a computer that works well in their system, you need their ideal components in you, which don't happen to be the same components your body would rather repair itself with. So every night when you sleep and you're doing all the cellular repair in your lungs and your heart and all that stuff's activating, with the depletion of copper and the depletion of sodium and like natural minerals in the sodium and the salt in the world, people's voltage is being downregulated. And even if they had the minerals in the food that they were eating, they don't have enough electricity in the hemoglobin to extract the ionic changes from it in the first place. So they pass it straight through their stool. And then if you do have that voltage, you still don't have enough minerals in the food. So it's like the way I'm approaching it is, okay, I'm not going to freak out, but I am going to get more serious about what I can grow in my backyard, at least to supplement what I eat when I'm out, if not to replace what I eat. Because I'm not even doing it from a prepper standpoint. I'm doing it from if I'm ever going to get healthy and I'm ever going to nip malnutrition in the blood at the cellular level, I have to focus on the soil in just the little quarter acre that I'm going to grow in. I have to treat it and I have to bring energy into the soil at the mycelial level to then begin infusing the right nutrients and bacteria into the food to then eat. At which point, my body does most of the rest of the work in terms of not aligning itself with the synthetics. Because keep in mind, like, they're hijacking a system. Your body is a quantum computer by God's design, if you ask me. But even if we want to say by evolutionary design, the design is still magnificent. And what they're asking it to do by processing internet services on it and using you as storage is like a hack to the original design.
Yeah.
So you can jailbreak an iPhone, but the iPhone might overheat. You can overclock a Pentium or a Core i7 or Core i9, but the doggone Northbridge or motherboard might melt because it's not rated at that sustained throughput. You can handle it in bursts, but not sustained. You might fry, the fans just can't keep up with the thermal, offset. So I think that like what's happening and where people kind of get the X's over their eyes and get taken off the game board is when you don't realize that you are the quantum computer and everything about their diet, their air, their water, their clothing offerings, their municipal services, the pharmaceuticals, the peptides, all of it is all about offering it to you for this other internet of systems things, the smart thing. Smart is essentially the tagline for the future paradigm, but it's only so smart because it's synthetically recreating the human experience at the nanoscopic level. And it's doing a pretty doggone good job at it because it basically got in stride and it only killed a few people relative to the amount of people. Now, I don't mean to belittle the millions of people that have probably been killed from this, but it's not the billions of people that took it. So it's Star Trek. And I'm like, y'all, I didn't even really like Star Trek that much. But that was a TV show in the what? 70s, 80s? When did Star Trek come out? 80s, 90s?
70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Right. That was approved by what we now know is our defense program, promoting, if you ask me, exactly what they were using at the R&D at the time, all of it. And none of it was traveling in warp speed to galaxies far, far away. It was all interdimensional. Spock, all of William Shatner, they were all sitting in the chair going to all these places. And I think consciously they were. That's the big part that I'm like, I think the bluff is only in the packaging, the wrapper. It's not in the nugget. The wrapper is a bluff. Okay, we lied. It's not a galaxy far, far away. Okay, the rocket doesn't really go out of the Van Allen belt or out of the dome or whatever. But if you want to go to Mars, good, let's go to Mars. And they tap you on your forehead. And then as far as your experience was, you were in freaking Mars, man. Nobody's going to tell you weren't. This is why I think those astronauts are halfway lying and they're halfway not. Because if we tally up every astronaut we've ever heard of, from Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the one that was faking the funk with her little rehab stutter, what is it like? We're talking 100 people, 50 people, 80 people, somewhere in there. They just Psyop those 80 people, and the rest of the entire world has been watching the reality show of that Psyop the whole time. So
you think that they, in their mind, they went where they said they went? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that they
like Contact the movie. Sorry.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like Westworld, like The Matrix, like the Upside Down and Stranger Things, but you don't need to be in salt water to get there. Like like the quantum realm. Like all of the movies are telling us it's this fake astral, this managed quasi. The best allegory I can give it's a dimension within a dimension. It's the cosmos, God, the angels, whatever, set up all the dimensions as we know it. Then some brainiacs got the bright idea to create their own dimension within the dimension of the 3D. And it's this mezzanine dimension that allows 4D and 3D to interact unauthorized. That's where we're trying to get the other dimension to compute for us. We're trying to see what parallel universes we can see in quantum superposition. It's all nomenclature that stops talking computery and starts talking spiritual real quick. You listen to Jordy Rose and he might sound like a pastor if you wasn't like, if you in the quantum church, you know, he might be the clergyman of the quantum church because his terminology switches from like technical to like ethereal, like back and forth. I caught on to that early. Like, hold on, you're talking about compute, and then you said, and we're hoping that we can access parallel dimensions, 512 to the 512th dimension, so that we can see what entity. And I'm thinking entity, like, well, hold on now, like that's not a technical word. That's like, I mean, you know, now we're hopping categories here. And that's where the compartmentalization idea came from. Because I just remember thinking, none of these computer people are spiritual. They're all like atheists or agnostic, like droids. None of these spiritual people are computer people. They don't know how to doggone plug the Apple TV in or how the remote works. These medical people are either secular or they're just like, I'm so busy, I don't have time to be religious. I'm just like, I believe in science. And so when someone says they want to have voice to God technology, they're like, yeah, whatever. Like, show me a peer-reviewed study that says that's possible. Meanwhile, Marcia Engel, the former editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, is saying, don't trust any of these studies because it's all bullshit. But they missed that statement by the lady who edited one of the most famous medical journals of all time. And they still want to see the medical research paper that says, show me the paperwork, as if that's how this works, you know? So I think that everybody's primed for this compartmentalized thing, this voice to skull technology. To me, that is the older stuff, the analog stuff, the hit you with a bioresonant, essentially harmonic of something that is much higher or lower. Because that's what I've learned. If y'all know, y'all are smart, so I can probably break this down real easy. It took me a minute to wrap my head around how digital things, how analog phenomena gets transmitted through digital means. It took me a minute to be like, okay, back this up for me, you guys. Like, let me work this again. But it's really simple when you understand harmonics. I don't have my piano plugged in, but if I go boom, 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 and I do octaves of whatever note that was, let's just say middle C, and then I'm doing an octave, an octave, an octave. In music, it's a very easy phenomenon to discuss the concept of harmonics. But mathematically, harmonics are like pretty identifiable mathematical derivatives of the notes that they're either harmonics from or harmonics of. So once you get into a certain harmonic, it's called 5G. It's called gigahertz. It's called digital frequency over time. Frequency is just how many da, 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 in a 1 second period.
Yep.
Is and how frequent are the da, 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 in a 1 second time interval. So once you understand, okay, the translation protocol between this time interval and this speed is this frequency, and then a harmonic of that is x to the 2 or the square root of it. You know, you do the math this way or that way, and I'm oversimplifying here. But then you get into sound. Now you're back. Now you're down. You're not in the gigahertz, you're in the hertz, and anything between 20,000 hertz, 20 hertz and about 20,000 hertz is that that's the drums. So, in fact, we got drummers here, and I like to keep it spicy, so we got a treat. Let's see if we can do this. Oh, I don't think I might be. Let's think it'll reach, but let's see. I think I'm in the right mode. You have to get that.
Yep.
Okay, so this right here, that's closer to the 20, 18, 16,000 hertz. Now right there, that's closer to 8, 10, 20 hertz. That's a nice 1200, 1400 hertz crackle. And the drum set collectively makes up the sonic picture. We were talking before the live stream that this gentleman here, Andrew, is a drummer, former drummer.
Yep.
So from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz exists phenomena that move your chest. You go to a rock concert, boom, 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 boom. The air is physically affecting the cells, coming from wires from Shure microphone repeaters that are transmitted in radio frequency. Soon as you keep going up the harmonic scale, you're talking scalar, gigahertz, terahertz. Now you're talking phenomena that go through the substrata or that bend outside of the measurable equipment we have. Where 30 years ago, Bluetooth would be considered magic. Now Bluetooth is as ubiquitous as ever, but it was always just radio frequency at a specific frequency and agreed upon protocol. So all that whimsical drumming analogy to say is that once I understood, okay, sound is this middle point at which low frequencies and high frequencies kind of meet across the human experience. And that human experience translates into measurable changes, for better or worse, inside the body. That's how you can translate. That's the simplest way to say, hey, if I take a Bluetooth signal, it probably sounds like it's like I'm hitting the hi-hat, but it's just 5 or 6 harmonics up. It's called something different. It would be called 16,000 hertz cymbal crashes in this zone of the conversation. But do some math to it, and it's now called a weapon that decouples, the covalent bond set between the O2 oxygen. Like the oxygen is O2, right? So the two oxygen molecules are held together by an electrical coupling thing that chemistry calls covalent bond. Well, if you know the right frequency to affect oxygen to excite those, just like the right frequency on the drum set can excite your chest, like Marty McFly style, you crank that thing up, you can decouple that oxygen from its molecular structure electrically, which will inform the chemical layer. And all of a sudden now you got free radical oxygen that you can't really metabolize, and you asphyxiate just standing there breathing just fine because you're not translating the blood, because they're hitting you with frequency that's breaking the oxygen apart before your hemoglobin can get it into your blood cells.
Decombobulator.
The decombobulator. And you'd be like, what? Huh? What? So I break it. I say all that stuff to not necessarily instill fear, because a lot of that technology is pretty old. I say it to kind of bring into the equation that where we are right now is not about just voice to skull or just weather manipulation or just dreamscape manipulation. I think it's about creating a Windows 2026 operating system on the clouds, like the literal sky net, so that weather, okay, drop down. Person in this zip code, okay, drop down. Okay, Canadian memory and French Canadian memory, translate. Okay, any a la carte synaptic neuronic request of light mimicry. Because what was the thing I was mentioning about biophotons and the phenomena that biophotons, like, so imagine the I can send you guys the link. I do have it saved. I remember I got to track it down, but it's a link where they show that you can use sound to create light in water. And it's essentially generating an acoustic biophoton through this like high pitched sound wave that's hitting this other sound wave, and it's creating this bubble inside of water, and the bubble has light on the inside of the middle of the bubble, like the scalar nexus point where all the frequencies are compacting in every angle tesseractally. I don't know what the word is, but whatever that dimensional nexus point is created a spark of light inside this bubble. And when I saw that, that's when it was like, damn, okay, a speaker And an acoustic phenomenon is essentially electricity and a fat magnet on the back of a speaker column. Electricity and magnetism, electricity and magnetism, electricity. Everything in the EMF manipulation zone about how your phone works is about manipulating electricity and magnetism. The doggone IEEE set the standard for the human wide body area network. The wide body area network, the W band, 2 tick marks away from the Bluetooth standard. Which to me says, okay, ever since y'all standardized this was the plan the whole time. Like, okay, what's next? Wi-Fi, okay, Bluetooth, okay, the human biofield, huh? Sure, let's just add it right on in with unrelated features. No, it was obviously set up acutely to be adjacent to the reason there's Bluetooth in everybody's everything all over now. And that's part of this new run up to Web3. So that's why I think that the voice to skull stuff is totally real. But I think that's one of those like, okay, we were kind of done with this in the 70s. Let's give people this because we got some people talk about it. And I know knock people who do because it is a real phenomenon. But I really think that we're at the place. It's like the difference between an analog cell generation 1 cellular call and a VoIP call, like a voice over IP call. I don't know if you guys remember. I don't know if you were computer nerds at the time, but I remember making like one of my first Skype calls, like a VoIP call, like where you're calling through digital internet and not through like some analog signal over a phone line. And I can distinctly remember being like, whoa, the quality's way better. But again, it's just a translation conversation. It's like chipping the phone, hearing your voice, translating it into electrical signals that get represented as ones or zeros. Those get sequenced over time through a wire or through a modulated conversation called Wi-Fi, and then across town, and then across the country and to Canada and wherever else. And then it gets decoupled and put back together on your end, and it all happens in under a second. And so we have a video included voice call. Now they're doing the same thing with your camera and your mic, 2 different mics at the exact same time. And when I started to really be like, yo, that's a lot of technology happening for the average Joe, like in real time. I think we're further into this than people realize. That's where I started learning more about the Department of Defense Information Network, the big overarching operating system that is every country plugged into this thing. The whole concept of the internet was born to be this quasi dimension that everybody hops into. I do think that they've been staving off the alien invasion thing to the other guy's point. Oh, if they were going to use the alien invasion, they would have done it already when humanity was dumber and that we weren't as aware. Not unless they needed you to be cybernetically linked for the alien invasion to hit your neocortex and not just fuck up because they didn't spray enough in your zone or some witch's brew has some vinegar in their backyard and messed up their electrocoupling in that zone. They probably was like, we ready, but like there's still some dead spots and like we don't want to screw this up. Let's go not back to the drawing board. But I think that now the technology for voice to skull and blue beam and stuff is more, it's less about projecting onto the layer that's 60 feet up and more like making sure that that layer stays ubiquitously gridded out so that spatially speaking, they can hit whatever they want to your visual cortex. So that spatially speaking, they can hit. I know you disappeared.
Oh, good. You don't need to see us.
Well, spatially, they disappear or sorry, I'm confusing thoughts. So imagine, are you familiar with like the film technology that's the Mandalorian and all of the stuff that's like how they use it on what they call volume stages? Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah.
So imagine that I've filmed on those stages before, and the way that they work is that they have something on top of the camera that's facing the ceiling. And the ceiling has like dots on it, just a bunch of little dots. And those dots have unique tags like .1, .2, .3, .4, .17, .18. And the system knows where each tag is located. So imagine that. As the camera moves, system is doing one simple thing. It's simply keeping track of where those dots are in relation to where the camera is. And the computer behind the scenes is doing all the graphics math to place the digital world in front of the camera signal or behind the camera signal is receiving. So the camera is doing a very dumb thing. It's doing what cameras always do. On top of the camera is a LiDAR sensor that's doing one very dumb thing. It's just tracking a bunch of dots in the ceiling. And it knows every dot has a unique number. So if the cameraman, it goes like this, it goes like this. The camera knows exactly which dots it's pointed at. It's doing the dot translation math in the graphics card, running Unreal Engine in real time that has some world loaded up that's projected onto the screen. And all this is happening so quick that it basically looks real.
Yeah.
So imagine that instead of the camera, your eyeballs, instead of the tracking dots on the ceiling, the smart dust in the air. And then the signal is just sent to your visual cortex, and your brain is the graphics card. And so all you're doing is now it's more about making sure that when you look to the left, what they're projecting to the left is tracked properly in the space. And that's actually pretty simple to do with one camera, never mind 2 super HD cameras that are beaming out of your forehead with a built-in gyroscope and, all kinds of newer, like real-time monitoring in and out of what's processing across your visual cortex. So I believe that the original technology was much more about direct localized stuff and more about hitting the upper atmosphere with something that spatially, physically is there so that you're seeing real phenomena just manipulated. And now we're kind of further into it, and it's a more direct to visual cortex pervasive link that just needs to have enough of a established grid to keep its orientation, like an augmented reality type.
Yeah, I was just gonna say more augmented than a virtual reality type.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the augmentation doesn't require some airplane to not screw it up by flying through it. It just requires your visual cortex and your phone that's probably in your pocket, or the watch that's probably on your arm, or the stuff probably coursing through your blood vein because you wanted to save your grandma. So it's like, it's way better backup for the trick when it's straight in you pervasively than it's like subject to some, random it's not that they couldn't control it. It's just about limiting variables. I think it's too many variables when you're spraying something in the air versus when you're hitting somebody directly with something. Because even if one person's glitches, the other 99 people's ain't, you know what I mean? It's like somebody's gonna be like, I saw Jesus. No, I saw an alien. What? I didn't see anything. Okay, that guy like hit the replay button. He has a dream, like we come up with some excuse. But the idea is, this is how I think it's custom tailored. Because I think soon as you're a Muslim your whole life and you convert to Jesus, they got the profile right updated on you. See what I mean? I used to think about that as a Christian growing up, like, how is everybody going to see Jesus at the same time?
Yeah.
How? Like, I believe it, but how? And now I am like, oh, easy. Like, everybody could watch the Queen's funeral at the same time if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Called the internet, you know what I'm saying? Everybody could hop on right now and watch anything that's live, the World Cup or something like that, the Stanley Cup, if they wanted to, right? So imagine if the override is just hit straight to you, and it's compelling because enough people saw it. And just like 9/11, I don't know, man. I was there. I didn't see no tower. I was there. What are you talking about? I saw a plane. Was it blue beam? Was it a plane? We wouldn't know. Now, you tell a New Yorker it wasn't a plane, and they'll be ready to swing at you because of the emotional, visceral reaction from them going through that trauma. But it doesn't really mean it wasn't a plane. It just means their perception picked it up as a plane. Then you have Building 7 and all those anomalies. And I'm with you guys on the same page as to the ridiculousness about the official narrative regarding what happened. It's just kind of like, what did happen though? Because now we know what didn't happen. But what was we looking at the time? Because I maintain what the pilots say. I don't care how amateur you are. You ain't taking that big plane that low without it falling apart. Structural damage would have been like several hundred feet up for the speed that they claim you are going and the eyewitnesses say. So That's why I'm more inclined to believe that it was a projection, because A, we would have no clue. And B, it's the best way to kind of time it, if you ask me. I mean, if I can control every aspect, including the visual aspect, and I'm the mad scientist, oh, give me the PlayStation controller, because we dialing this one in. You know what I mean? I'm not taking it,
Right.
leaving anything to chance. So I really do think that Blue Beam will be used as a supplementary aspect, but this is my big prediction about this disclosure. Because like this guy was reading, I think we're heading there. I think that all the conversations are coming back around. Spielberg's movies coming back out. The 80s was rife with all that stuff. And here we are again 40 years later. I think that it has a little to do with astrological positioning, and like you can't just hop into the double dutch game at any point. You kind of got to wait for certain alignments. But I also think it has to do with they need to get rid of a lot of old R&D. And a lot of these cryptids and hybrids are just biological experiments in labs and basements that your Stranger Things tells you is a Demogorgon, but it's probably just posted up at the Ottawa or Nova Scotia research lab in the underground sublevel B from some 70s and 80s project that they don't really know what to do with it yet. They're going to hit the master, button. Okay, open all doors, override all emergency protocols. And that will be, quote unquote, an alien invasion, supplemented with Blue Beam. And I should say Blue Beam supplemented with this other practical, because I do think that it will take certain cities looking like a scene out of a horror movie, combined with people seeing things, combined with maybe a cybernetic holographic projection of the next dimension over, because a lot of people who are clairvoyant and who just are sensitive to spirits and the energies of the realm with no technology at all will tell you about the jinn, the demons, the machine elves, all these different things that you heard about on certain drugs and stuff that has nothing to do with augmented human experimentation. So maybe, I remember hearing somebody about a decade ago talk about how their mother was given a experimental eye drop, and it was like something to correct her cataracts or something like that. She's an older lady. Gave her these eye drops. She was part of this clinical trial. She said she could start seeing entities. And I'm only going off the fact that that was this gentleman's mother's actual testimony, but I'm sitting there going, that seems about right, because it's a lot of people. If you're gonna fake people, growing up Christian, right? I was always like, the devil's trying to fake omniscience, synthetic omnipresence, synthetic omniscience. AI and this pervasive surveillance state is essentially synthetic omnipresence and synthetic omniscience. But how are they going to simply pull the wool over everyone's eyes a la carte? I just couldn't really put my head around it, technologically speaking. And now I'm at a place where I'm like, you decouple enough people's discernment, you scare them enough, you give them enough stuff they've never seen or heard of. I can see it working. It wouldn't catch everybody, but it would catch most of those cookies from falling off that tray. And all those cookies that are like, I'm not scared of nothing. Let's go. That's who you got the cryptids for, the real ones. No Blue Beam.
Right.
Send the real one to him. And he's like, it's you, holographic projection, until he eats your gun out of your hand and you're like, ah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a mixed bag for everybody. And I don't even know that they have it this planned out. I just think something will destabilize the infrastructure to the point of which the bad guys will rat on the other bad guys, and the fail-safe button will be the last straw. You might can make the argument that somewhere up the chain they were hoping that button would be pushed. I go back and forth, because sometimes I go, they built a whole lot of infrastructure that doesn't seem like they want to break just to move into the new control paradigm, because they basically are already there without having to break it.
Yeah.
But then there's the other part of me that's like, yeah, but you're going to get way more people on board if you just break the old one all the way and give them no option. And if the break is pretty radical, like if it looks like an alien invasion and Jesus and a million people who Christian disappear, now people are ready to like now you got energy. I mean, think of it from an energy vampire standpoint. You see what I'm saying? It's like you can work with. That's enough capital to build a new empire off of, that type of energy.
Yeah. I think for a bit too, it was sort of like, let's give them the rope and see if they hang themselves, right? Let's see if they
Exactly.
just tear this down themselves. No, okay, there's enough people that are,
Exactly.
Let's
Red.
and I think I agree with you. I think 9/11 was what you said, and I think that was kind of testing for this kind of.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That it worked then. It worked on a lot of people, and I don't think that it's a stretch that something like that could happen again.
It worked on so many people that it's still working on 99% of them today,
Yeah.
25 years later. It's like I mean, like, as far as deceptions go, I'm not buying it, but I bought it 25 years ago. You see what I mean?
Mhm.
At first, I was in high school. I'm like, oh Lord, what's happening?
Even when
So
I knew something wasn't right with it, I never thought, oh, it was a hologram or whatever. I thought it actually happened, but
yeah.
the government knew and let it happen or whatever. I didn't. But when I finally came to that conclusion, which is kind of still where I am, it blew my mind. But it was a test. It was to see if they could pull it off, and they did it on TV and with cameras and
yeah.
with
Yeah.
everything. And
And
you
then
can't
they
talk about it.
You can't talk about it. And they leveled a whole building where the hologram button didn't work.
Yeah,
And then they still acted like everything was on the that
yeah,
wasn't weird. Never mind building 7. Patriotism. Shut up.
yeah.
Next, Afghanistan. Weapons of mass destruction. So you're right. It turned into this what the heck show, this just complete bullish approach to propaganda. But I think you're right. I didn't think it was that at first. I just, I thought it was a timed crash with a timed demolition. Once I began to wake up to it, it
Mhm.
wasn't until the pilots and the aviators started chiming in. They're like, "You guys, I don't know. I know a lot of pilots, and I don't think any of them I know could have made that move." Because what they keep saying is that airplanes of that size are not rated to go that speed and make those types of turns that tightly, that quickly, that low.
Mhm.
It's not a fighter jet. It's a doggone 777. So because of that, the pilots are giving credence to the incredulity of a plane more than anybody else. And I actually know people who who flew for American Airlines and was supposed to be flying that morning. Not that specific flight, but like had colleagues that died in the crash. And so I've asked them about this, and they're very emotional about it. So to this day, they don't like talking about it. Nothing's a conspiracy. It's like men that need to be honored, like coworkers of theirs, basically that lost their life. And the whole time I'm going, this is why it works. It's because the very people close enough to really give you insight are too emotionally scarred to consider it beyond what it was. That's
Mhm.
like the glue over top of the lie. 25 years later, you still too emotionally scarred to really look at, okay, but like, could he have made that move? Like for real though.
Yeah.
And because if the answer is no, then now you got to rethink your last 25 years of grief. So I just think that we're there, man. I want people to know like they don't need to be afraid, but they absolutely need to learn how to develop a trust barometer. And a lot of people got that electrochemically decoupled from them. There's a doctor who reached out to me shortly after I started talking about this biofield conversation, and several people were like, "You need to get in touch with him. He's like a big guy, a big deal. You need to." I had no clue who he was at the time. Upon speaking with this guy, he basically is like, "You do a good job of articulating how this works, and you're spot on. But he's like, here's some things you might not know." And we got to talking, and one of his services that he offers for his business is a biofield scan. Like he will scan your field and it'll tell, like, this is the crazy part. He's putting me up on game of what he been doing for 30, 40 years, but that anybody can do themselves in their own equipment or that the government can do on an industrial level from a photo. That's analog, Polaroid, JPEG, doesn't matter, from a photo. There is enough of a remnant of your bioresonant aura around your whole body in any photo
Wow.
to derive the electrical unique number of you from a picture. After which that photo can be put in, scanned, that number can be read, and a Tesla coil can be a frequency over a Tesla coil can be sent out, and then two other coils receive that frequency, and it can tell you the state of your health or your body's field at that moment. Now, at which point I learned, well, okay, now that makes a lot of sense why Apple gives everybody all this iCloud storage for free, because what better way to really dial in the human API that's like, I thought about it and then it like manifested, because they're pervasively capturing not just Face ID, because I think that's a separate thing. They're just capturing photos, and those photos that are syncing to iCloud every time you snap a picture are informing any machine learning algorithm that's applied to it about way more than just facial recognition. It's almost like one line item on like 1,000 line item list.
Yeah.
And what he's informing me of, he's like, yeah, I can just take a photo of anything or anyone and tell what the chemical composition of that based on the electron spectroscopy of it in the photo. And I'm like, okay, so we got to talking about his general scan. There's a line item on his test that says divine/white light connection. It's got your general vitality, it's got your spleen, your liver, all these systems in your body and how they measure up electrically speaking, like voltage wise, and how active they are from an electrical standpoint. And then it has, the bottom of the scan results have a bunch of enzymes, probiotics, and things you can take to help if your numbers are low. But in the top category, there's your general vitality, and a few different line items down is your divine/white light connection. And I asked him, I said, okay, my number is it's like 128 or something like that, 133. He's like, well, that's pretty good. That's not bad for your first time scan. Most adults come in somewhere a little lower than that. Babies are around 380. That's considered 350 to 380 is considered like the purest essence of that pure electrical connection to the divine when you're first born. And then he said, as an adult, you want to be somewhere between 100 and 200, upwards of 200, a little over if you can help it. Then you're considered really, you just have a stronger antenna to that aspect of your field is all it really means. It doesn't mean you're closer to God, but it might mean you can hear and discern God a bit stronger. It's almost like if you have an FM antenna in your car and your antenna's broke, it doesn't mean you can hear the radio any less, or that your radio receiver is any less capable. It just means something about the connection needs to be strengthened in order to get the signal to go through as clear. So I asked him, I said, so whose number would be at a 0 in this category? Are we talking zombies, like dead people? Does everybody have at least some number? And he goes, I'll tell you exactly whose number's at 0. Everyone who got that doggone what, so that YouTube doesn't delete it.
Yeah.
And I said, excuse me, hold on now. You're not joking here. He's like, no, I'm not joking at all. And he was dead serious. And I go, but like, have you tested people who you had as clients before they got the injectable, and then you tested them after? He said, absolutely. In fact, a large portion of my clientele is from the Pacific Northwest, that Oregon, Seattle, Washingtonian, liberal, drives a Subaru, that type. He was like, we have a good chunk of my clientele is those people, and a lot of them got the injection, and I got a tremendous amount of repeat customers that are like, doc, scan me again. I got, well, something changed. And he said, in every single instance, straight to 0, that number. Wow. On that, not every number, but just that one particular number. And so I said, so what is that, like severing their connection to God? And he said, well, I wouldn't say it's severing your connection to God in an ultimate sense, but it is decoupling your field from the aspect or channel that is used to connect to the divine.
Yeah.
So it's almost like unplugging your antenna from the back of the radio.
So,
and acting like,
when people say removing the God gene, right? That's like, yeah.
And I asked him that, and I said, so you telling me this whole God gene, God particle thing is for real, for real? And he was like, yeah, in the 90s, they figured it out, and they've been gunning for it ever since. All these vaccines since the 90s have found creative ways to kind of like make the excuse for it here or there. They just didn't get the real ubiquitous one until COVID.
Yeah.
Where the world was taking the same thing. And he was like, that was their, all right, we in. And they just went straight for the jugular with that one particular VMAT2. Maybe it's the VMAT2, but it's the whole God particle gene. And I asked him, I said, so have you been able to get anybody to recouple or like repair the connection? And he goes, well, it's funny you mention that. There are a couple of clients that I've had. He said, my protocols are normally like 60-day thing, 30-day, 60-day, maybe 90 days tops. He said, I've had one client who was really adamant about getting his number back up, and he's been on it for 18 months. I got another client who's been on this protocol for 24 months. And after 18 months, 24 months, then we started to see the number go back up.
Huh.
Said it never went back up to the number it was initially at, but it did go from 0. So he's essentially saying you can regrow the connection that's severed, but you're going to need to really focus on it, and you're going to need to be about that life, and it's going to have to be top priority, and you're going to have to commit for 2 years if you want to see any results.
Yeah.
And most people probably wouldn't care if you told them all this. That's
Exactly.
the unfortunate thing.
Yeah.
Like they would, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I need a moment. Yeah, sorry, I need to step out for 1 sec.
okay.
I have a tiny bladder.
Okay, no worries. But you can imagine, like, that's like, it was a heavy thing for me to hear, not because I took it, but because I had people who I really cared about who did.
Yeah.
And when I asked him, like, so what do you think that practically translates to? And he's like, it's hard to tell, but his hunch, which is the same as mine, was that it just clouds your discernment. It's almost like your discernment antenna is static on the radio. Should I do this? What does my gut feeling say? Or earth the gut feeling.
Yeah.
And imagine it's not like the radio is broken, and it's not like the antenna is broken. It's just been decoupled. Somebody reached into your car dashboard and snatched the wire out from the back and left the radio right there.
Well, and I found that since that 2021 era where I have friends, obviously, like you said, I have a lot of people in my life that I care about that took it.
Yeah.
And before where in areas that they might have been a little more open-minded, because I've always been the conspiratorial weird friend.
Yeah, exactly.
And there were times when, they'd sit and hear me out, and now you get that glazed over look. And I was listening to something I don't know if you know who Alana Freeland is. She's written books on a lot of like geoengineering stuff.
Mhm.
And she talks about, what they're spraying in the skies and all that. And she talks about it in a frequency sense of like that it actually like cuts off at a certain point, like it creates a threshold, an individual threshold for people where like she's talked to people that say, I try and read your books and I get 20 pages in and then I fall asleep every time and I can't seem to get past this
the
certain
cognitive threshold or something like that.
yeah. And that's what that kind of reminds me of is
Yeah.
like, you're getting they've attenuated now these people's frequencies to this point where you can get surface level with this stuff. You can get
Right.
to the mainstream conspiratorial level with it. But then once you try and push that boundary to what we've been talking about today, you've got people nappy news all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
they're like, they're falling, they're nodding off on you. Yeah, the sky's the limit, man. It's like saying, if I have a soldering iron and I can reroute the motherboard in your computer,
Yeah.
like, what is the effect of that? Like, I don't know. I haven't decided how I want to reroute it yet. You know what I'm saying? It's very open-ended. That's why that was the big issue I was trying to just warn people with this whole injection, the spike protein, the lipid nanoparticle, and mRNA in general. I'm going, you guys, this is like computer code. I'm like you. I have come to learn that the biological virus is a red herring. But I have a lot of friends who talk about that publicly. And what I always would be yapping in their ear as I was learning all this stuff over the last few years is, you guys, you're nailing that. You're nailing the fact that they've been faking the funk on biological viruses. But your biggest hole, the gap you're creating in your audience is, okay, well, if it wasn't a virus, then what was it? You're creating that big deficit. And your answer is always a decent answer, but it's never good enough because you give them 50,000 things it could be, and nobody really knows. It's like, I think I know what it is. I come from a computer science world, and a computer virus is a real thing. Like it's not like a biological virus, because a computer virus is really just a nickname not for anything that just biologically grows from a dead cell particle. No, it's some guy sits at a computer and writes code that gives the computer a different set of instructions than the computer was supposed to come with. So if you are the quantum computer and you have biological instructions hard coded into your deoxyribonucleic acid that they call your DNA. And then if you're super fringe, you get into there's no such thing as DNA. And I'm there with you. I'm down for the surf ride. But the only reason I can skip that jump so easily is because, okay, well, the A in DNA is acid, and acid is liquid, and liquid is a wave state. And so if the wave state can be manipulated or it's held in balance by your own field, okay, sure, there's no such thing as DNA. It's all just acid. It's all just liquids, all just waves. But that's neither here nor there. The point is you have liquid waves that we call DNA that's got an instruction set for your body. And if this technology that's a computer virus is just this magnetic strip of ribonucleic acid that can, through a reverse transcription enzyme, be converted into deoxyribonucleic acid. You guys, that's a computer virus for your biology in its basic rudimentary terms. I know y'all aren't computer people. I don't know what else to tell you. That's a computer virus. Because the only difference in a computer virus and a computer hack or a computer mod or a computer upgrade is the intention of the software developer. It's all just code that's written to modify the original function. Was that code written by the developer to upgrade it? Was it written by a guy who left the job to remove certain government backdoors, but then otherwise keep your experience normal? Was it written by some nefarious Russian hacker to give them backdoor access in the whole Kremlin to everything? Whoever wrote it is really the difference between whether it's called a virus or an upgrade.
Yeah.
And once you learn the basics of just that, to me, it was like, there's no way on earth I'm trusting this computer paradigm from Moderna or Pfizer or friggin' AstraZeneca was the big one in Canada. Or the Oxford AstraZeneca one. Like, I'm not trusting these institutions. This company just got fined again for lying about their ingredients. Some of y'all forgot that in 1977, they did the same thing, faking the funk with the emergency use authorization that they did in 2021. It's like they lied about it twice and nobody said anything and nobody learned the first time. And now y'all just sticking it in your arm. So I got over that initial frustration, and then I developed a lot of empathy for people when I realized what was happening, and a lot of patience with the fact that even for the awake folk, they really thought it was a bioweapon. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, you guys. I don't think that's how this goes. And I have come to now to learn it wasn't. I wouldn't consider it a bioweapon, but I would consider it a biocyber interface, an operating system. And I think that, like, when I read it in computer science, like once you move the compartmentalization hat from medical biology to computer science, it makes perfect sense. It's like a
100%.
complete, like, oh, got it. It was just a stopgap. Of course, a dead cell particle isn't going to fly through the air off some hippopotamus ass and like float on an airplane luggage and land in your nose and start a pandemic. That doesn't make any sense. It's dead. It's the only evidence of something dead doing something to a living system. It's like bacteria is alive, and yeah, you can get a bacteria imbalance, but a virus is a dead particle that hijacks your cellular machinery. No, I think a virus was a computer virus through electromagnetics this whole time.
Yeah.
This whole time. And it was a bit rudimentary when it was just SARS-1 and this and this and this back in the day. But now it's a lot more complex. And I think that COVID symptoms was just, okay, we're scaling up quadrant zone in the Seattle Puget Sound area. That's where the Diamond Princess cruise ship shows up. So here goes. That's Microsoft. That's Bill Gates territory. I'm sure Vancouver felt a little bit of effects, just like, Seattle and everybody. They crank it up, and people are like, "Oh, my throat! I can't taste. I can't smell. It's metallic. Oh, I bet it's metallic." You know what I mean? And the only reason the conversation couldn't move from there is because you got silenced as soon as you mentioned anything about technology.
Yeah.
You were socially shamed for even questioning the science, the religious industry of vaccinology. And, molecular biology, which had red herrings this whole time. Y'all went to college for virology, and it turns out there's no virus. Y'all went to college studying a fake thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you would say the same thing about a seminary pastor because you don't believe in religion, and you would say he went to college for a fake thing. But don't let him tell you went to college for a fake thing because how dare you?
Yeah.
Feathers get ruffled. But
And you pepper in people's emotions and all
my
that, and
goodness.
it's perfect.
Don't have
storm.
them have some papers on the wall from some student loans that they just paid. Oh, don't have them be paying off the student loans still because they ain't trying to hear it. But I think that is part of the programming. I really do follow your train with the whole. I hate to reduce it all to the injection, but I think that the injection consolidated the
Yeah.
access and the integral control. So now it's not 15 systems trying to achieve the same goal. It's just one. And it's got its input output dialed in. Your biofield is the input output. Your red blood cells and your bone marrow and your mitochondria in your cells are the processors. Talk about multi-threaded processing, right? You got processors for days. Your fat is your storage, and the piezoelectricity in your muscles and cerebral spinal fluid is the battery.
Yep.
And in that regard, right, you got to pump 120 volts or 240 volts into a computer for it to power up. You put a hot biscuit and some orange juice in me, and I can pretty much go for several hours. So it's like you are a way more efficient computer than a desktop computer is. And you can distribute processing, quantum process. I mean, imagine if this injection wasn't about decoupling your discernment, but using your discernment like a port on a switch or networking router, using that channel as just for a separate function, not decoupling it, but putting a little intermediate in there with like a little threshold off on off flip. So it's off by default because it's routing it all to their system.
Just bypassed. Yeah.
Just bypassed, exactly. But it's the way that they approach machine learning in the future. Oh yeah, well, Jordy Rose and them, we got our new quantum computer. We partnered with Pfizer so that human neurons are the new processors and not these quantum chips. And y'all don't know that because y'all don't know nothing about what we talking about. Y'all just know Bill Gates, Michael Dell, Apple, Steve Jobs. They give everybody the basics.
Yeah.
But really, you have just D-Wave and probably 10 or less other companies that I've heard of making any sort of solid headway in the quantum computer space. And I think that they're all got a fishing rod on their funding from the real people with this real technology because they don't really want them to get too far ahead. They just want them to stay a horse or two ahead of the public so that they can stay 100 horses behind what they really doing. And people like Jordy himself are probably augmented. You see what I'm saying? So he gets all the shine because as far as he's concerned, he's invested his entire life into making this a reality. And, maybe, just maybe, it becomes that way for him. I guarantee you his intellectual property, his consciousness is on file with some company somewhere. But when I learned that, no, they have machines that can snatch a human consciousness from their body, place it in a magnetic resonance chamber like the size of a clothing iron, stick it on a shelf somewhere, and you're doing time in the other dimension, like some interstellar shit. That's when things were like, whoa, timeout. And then you talking about the military aspect, the prison and like punishment aspect, and then there's the commercial aspect where it's not under duress. You're doing it, for fun or just for the shit and giggles of it.
Yeah, the marketing side of it is almost like that's the benign part of it, right? Like that's just playing around.
That's just playing around. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what I think these celebrities are going through. I don't know how into the celebrity culture y'all are really. I mean, good if you don't pay none of attention to it. But all this clone conversation and the soulless conversation, the sunken place, there are layers of things going on. But my general hunch is that people in that industry get purchased like at an auction. And whoever owns you and owns your contract owns your genome, and they can do with it whatever they decide they want. If they want to rent you out to a head of state, honey, you just getting rented out to a head of state. It was called MK Ultra 70 years ago. Now it's called we got the Westworld iPad and just tell me the serial number of that one and blue. And okay, now she's yours. Okay, you got 48 hours to have a good night with her, but after that, you got to return her. Don't damage it. It's a high value product.
Yeah.
And, oh, we got the insurance rider, your COI showed up, so now we'll actually ship you the model. And, a hot celebrity shows up. Kim Kardashian shows up to your front door. I'm being facetious slightly with who. I'm just using her as an example, but I'm
Yeah.
saying this is what I think happens. And this is what I think certain celebrities like Kanye West knew and couldn't really say and kind of said it in his own way, but he came off pretty crazy when you don't know enough about the types of things he would be given access to.
Yeah.
I think we watched him go through the psychosis of that in real time.
Like
Yeah.
the learning about the process and
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, that it tracks and makes a lot of sense.
Well, that's why they can end the contract when they want to.
Exactly.
Right.
And so
This
when people say
Oliver
they
Tree thing that just happened, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
When people say they sign their name in blood and they sign their soul to the devil, there's for people who haven't worked in Hollywood, I always try to make it clear there are two ways to take that statement: the literal way or the allegorical way. Both of them are true. So the allegorical way, you do sign contracts that essentially rot your soul because of how untrue you are to yourself and your morals and your integrity. And no, you haven't like killed any babies or drinking blood, but you've basically promoted degeneracy for a paycheck, and like you're kind of screwed up for it toward the end of your career. That is a form of selling your soul to the devil, almost like a salesman, but
Mhm.
still. Then there's oh, you happen to know somebody who happened to see you and want to bring you into the inner circle, at which point you are given a special meeting, at which point the contract has a bloody quill next to it, or the ink is in the top. The blood is in the top part of the pen, and you are made aware, hey, this is a thing. You are entering into a separate space. This is not your regular shit going on. We do run things around here. And if you want to be a part of what we run in, you are pledging in. And it is a lifetime pledge. And we have the power to make you a household name, and we have the power to remove you from the game board. And a lot of broken, greedy, or otherwise under the influence of some form of duress, artists, both female and male, choose to take that contract and sign that. And I had heard about that until I met not one, but two friends in LA that were offered that contract and didn't take it.
Mhm.
I thought it was like anybody who offered it would totally take it. And then I come to learn later no, no, no. There's a lot of people that don't take it because at that point, they're not trying to really trick you. They vetted you to see if you're cool with the way they get down. And then they want to bring you in, help make some money with you and control some of the way you make your money, but they're able to actually put you on the front of everything. So it's about like, cool, fresh meat. He's dirty enough and compromised enough. Let's offer him. And if that person agrees, then it's when I think souls get snatched and bodies get replaced and clones come in. And depending on how effective your brand is, we either just gonna keep this like we own you, right? So if we want to make another 10 billion off you over the next 10 years, I'm just sorry, sir, you're getting cloned and we're making 10 billion. You have no say in it anymore. But
Yeah.
that doesn't apply to every celebrity, just some of them.
Can certainly see it. I missed, I think, a bit of the beginning of that, but like, the Jim Carrey stuff, Jamie Foxx, the Joe Biden, there's been so many
Yeah.
obvious clones. Yeah,
Some brands are more valuable than others, right?
yeah.
And some people meant more behind the scenes than people realize. So Jim Carrey is an interesting one. I was always a Jim Carrey fan. I never really considered him like super elite, or I kind of just figured he was a Hollywood, whatever, funny guy. Somebody made me aware that he was the high priest in Los Angeles for a season.
Mhm.
So we know him as funny comic Jim Carrey, but the industry knew him as like a high sorcerer for a bit. And you can kind of see how his comedy at a certain point in his career was a little innocent, and then it took a little vulgar turn, and then he just disappeared for forever, and then he came back real weird and cryptic.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like I look at it like a recruiting thing. It's like, hey man, we had a good thing going in 93, 94, 95. Like, what do you say? I mean, the good life, you got a little bored of the good life. I don't know, you guys. I just don't want to deal with the rituals. I don't want to do the keep up. I just don't want to. It's stressful. Oh, okay. And then they go away for a bit and they come back like, okay, I got bills, I got people, what I got to do. and they pledge up, or they kind of like, catch up on the dues that they missed paying, and then they're rewarded in that industry. And I do understand that the corporate culture of that is such that when you know about this, you just don't talk about it, because there's no winning to talk about it. Meaning the PR is so dialed in that the very people who you saw at the shrine or temple or ritual that night before, if you wanted to be like, oh my gosh, tell them it was awful, they did this, they would look at you and be like, I'm sorry, she has mental health issues. Let's pray for her. Nobody wants to die. They all want to live. I mean, they already did already, but they're all in self-preservation mode. So when I tell you, I have colleagues, just friends this one guy I'm thinking of, he was private security for about a decade, different celebrities, worked for a big TV show for a while, and then left the TV show and started doing private security. He'd be like, Chris, I take some of these clients to these temples and shrines where they're praying to these statues and entities for fame and fortune in their album or their book release or their TV show season or whatever. And he's like, not everybody's into this. Some people aren't into this at all, and they work just fine. And there's plenty. I would say this isn't even the majority of Hollywood. I don't think it's the majority. I think it's the upper 5 to 3% of Hollywood, but not everyone. And he's like, there are temples with statues to Baphomet in Los Angeles. And I drove clients there, and he said, you stand back there, and all the other private security for all the other people are standing back in the back too, where the limos pull up. And he's like, private security will talk amongst themselves to other private security, but they're not going to talk to the public. And he's like, you would just see famous face after famous face after famous face. Influential, maybe they're not famous, but they're the president of this or the so-and-so of that or the executive of this. And he's like, I had to get out. I couldn't keep working in that industry. And that's part of what informed me. Oh, like, it's some really big moves happening in the background, you guys. This is not just like, we're not in Dorothy, Kansas, little, like mixing my metaphors, but we're not in Oz anymore, or we're not in Kansas anymore. We're in the land of Oz. And I just want people to know that, like, the quicker you can be okay with decoupling from these bigger systems, like sports is a great example. I don't hate on people who watch sports. I just understand that if you pass the hurdle in life where that's like a aspect where you can kind of see that as a historical aspect, you're one step closer to being less plugged in to what they're going for. It's all reinforcement propaganda, right? It's like your favorite athletes are selling you insurance and selling you cell phones and selling you stuff.
Vaccines.
In football, exactly. In football, Travis Kelce hopped on with Taylor Swift to be like, get this injection, right? This is like impressionable young kids that weren't anywhere close to the target demographic, but still got it, because how else are you going to get somebody to sign up for a biological operating system?
Yeah.
It's a very, like, it makes total sense when you see it for what it is. The reason nothing made any sense is because we were told that this was supposed to be some helpful preventative for a coronavirus, but it's like not preventing it, and it's making people worse off. And y'all are acting really weird about it. And like, why y'all keep changing the rules on things? Like, y'all said it takes 9 years, and then y'all said it takes 9 months, and then y'all just didn't get it approved, and y'all skip phase 2 trial. Like, hold on now. Like, I could forgive one skip of a bullet point, but y'all skipping 75% of the bullet points here and calling me weird for pointing it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, man. It's a trip for anyone whose eyes are open to it, and it's, I don't even know what it would feel like to be a normie and be that kind of like dialed into that right now. Like, that's and that's what I worry about, like, is I obviously see where you're coming from with this. We're headed towards this reset of sorts, right? That's what they're pushing for. And did they get enough of the operating systems online to pull this off? And for the ones that didn't, that, like you said, there's going to be people that don't see anything in the sky. And
Right.
is that what happened in the past with these resets, where it's like, is there so few of them that they can just stick them away in a psychiatric hospital and be like, well, they're just nuts. Just don't worry about them. And life
Def-
carries on.
Maybe. And maybe they have something for that, because maybe the psych wards were just for the grandkids and kids of the people who were the holdouts. See,
Yeah.
my hunch tells me that human preservation takes care of like 85% of the naysayers. You could like see some anomalous thing, and enough people are persuadable enough for the government or the UN to come in and be like, you didn't see anything. This wasn't anything. This was an imagination. And then a year later, those people are like, I think it was just an imagination. It's easier for me to just agree that it was an imagination than to fight what my memory wants to pretend like it was if it makes my life uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think that last 15%, that's what the asylums are for. They're like, no, I know what I saw. No, that was an alien. No, like that's who the insane asylums are for. But again, maybe you don't even need those, because all you need is a few normies with a decoupled discernment field and an AR and some guns to be like, it is now legal to kill people who disagree with the narrative.
Right.
And then, you've got a whole new market,
Yeah.
emerging markets.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot going on in the background. I really think that your discussions are pretty much aligned as far as I could, from everything that I heard so far. I'm like, exactly, they're tracking. And I think that if people just knew, you don't have to be afraid necessarily, but you also, this is what I was going to say. So I would always ask, okay, control, but control to what end? Y'all want ultimate control, but do y'all not already have that right now? Because basically y'all just snap y'all fingers and people, minus a few holdouts, did what y'all said. And I'm learning that the control, like I have I'll put it like this. I don't know if I fully have wrapped my head around this concept of an upcoming reset, of an upcoming elemental reset. I definitely know that there is an upcoming technological and situational governmental reset for sure. But I have a friend who's always talking to him and I will catch up every few months and we'll talk like 4 or 5 hours. And then I always walk away from those conversations like, wow, maybe I never really thought of that. And one thing he said that threw me for a loop is that when you follow the patterns of cataclysms of antiquity, it does seem to settle. And he's presented like tons of pieces of data points about this. It does seem to settle in this 400 to 500-ish year time cycle, meaning we consider Common Era and before Common Era, BC versus AD, this agreed upon time reset that everybody acknowledges, but nobody really talks about. Like, okay, pause the tape. Whose decision was it, this BCAD thing? I don't think it was any individual's decision. I've come to believe that I think it was an elemental reset. Mother Earth having her flow, her menstrual cycle, where the eggs of old get flushed out and then a new stasis is set up. And as far as the Prometheus story and the Noah's flood story and the mud flood story, that's much more recent. But even the concept of Jesus' birth or death being this nexus point about Anno Domini from a Roman Catholic perspective versus before Christ, I see these now as elemental resets, times where Earth itself, irregardless of any government's decision, was like, all right, okay, time to shed this exoskeleton. I come to understand this perspective from my friend because he's explaining these elements, earth, water, fire, and air, combine in a fifth super element, if you will, called plasma. I believe plasma is the etheric in between. Air is affected with wireless technology through the same system that wireless earthquakes, through the same system that homeopathy and water entrainment is. If you ask me, you want to get people COVID, just beam it into their water supply. That's the easiest way to do it. Never mind the Diamond Princess cruise ship is some bat and pangolin in the Chinese wet market. Just hit it straight at the Department of Water and Power, hit them straight with the frequency in the water that just flows into everyone's tap water faucets drinking filters. It's not anything you can filter out with a Brita. It's frequency that stays through all the filtering. People are none the wiser, and then they're just drinking the instruction set that gives them the disease you want them to have. That's a smarter play than the risk of a volatile virus in a briefcase in a Wuhan lab, like, you know.
Yeah.
But the point is that my homeboy is schooling me. He's like, "Hey, Chris, I think that based on the cycles, the earth is coming up for another reset, and the elite know this. So all their behavior actually has nothing to do with really running the world now. It's about running the world on the other side of the elemental reset, gathering all the digital data, storing it, the underground cities, the seed banks, the kind of reckless treating of Mother Earth now, knowing that she's going to reset and be fine. Like, it's like the climate change only needed to work for a little bit. But you see what I'm saying? It's like y'all are treating this place like it's a temporary rental, and like y'all know it. And like something about the setup of this whole thing, you can see, like, if they hit the toilet bowl flush button and we're little dookie particles and we've never seen a toilet bowl flush, we're all just swirling around like, life's pretty weird. I used to be in a warm colon and now I'm in this like cold swirling bowl. Like, I don't know what's going on. Somebody knows that the drain is coming. And we're seeing life through this hypothetical turd analogy as these like floating dookie particles trying to make sense of our orientation in the world and all this. And whoever hit the flush button, or if Mother Earth hit the auto flush button, whoever is outside of this stall can see very clearly what's happening. And they're trying to say, okay, if we gather enough digital imprint, we can offer people a service if they happen to live through the reset. But if not, we can set up the new paradigm. We can rewrite the Bible. We can rewrite everything. We can introduce new animals. We can introduce this transhuman as a human evolution species and just call it evolution. And anybody who says it's not, they crazy. They going into the loony bin. But everybody else just, okay, now you can just dial in that you rather be a cat than a person. And so you have a tail, and that phenotype grows through synthetic biology. And, you rather have a penis that turns into a vagina for dual purpose use. So it's like you invent your own custom 3D printed equipment, and you have freak like sub niches that are totally into that thing. And you have other people that like, check here if you have a synthetic penis because you're not in my dating app. So both will exist. I just think I think if this concept of this cycle period of these natural resets, to me, it's almost like it tracks. It's the one thing that most explains the agreed upon time differences between just something as common as BC versus AD. It explains the Dark Ages, this period where we have Plato and Aristotle, all the Socratic literature, Roman literature, Greek literature, and then hundreds of years where they just basically have no dynastic cultural imprint for like the 700s, 800s, 900s. It's just this like weird zone. My hunch is that it wasn't Dark Ages at all. It was like a thriving whatever, Atlantis or whatever, that then crashed, that then got reset. And then one way to explain a reset is called BC versus AD. Another way is called the Dark Ages. It's a separate reset where new animals get introduced. We take the dinosaurs out. We introduce griffins and dragons. Okay, mud floods. Okay, take the griffins and dragons away. We introduce chickens and like stuff that nobody ever talks about in antiquity, animals that they didn't hear of. And this is how it's been. And I can't say that I'm an expert on how many cycles that there have been, maybe thousands, maybe hundreds, maybe tens. I don't know. But it really does seem like life is cyclical, carbon is cyclical, water, ether is cyclical, energy is cyclical. Everything that's living has this natural detox state. The earth balances itself, so why wouldn't it balance itself from like an ultimate polarity, energetic sense? It almost like fits together in this big cosmic puzzle. And I'm going, of course you don't need to go out of world. If you can go out of body and create a synthetic body, or you can preserve your natural body through cryostasis or some funky technology, you can live a year or two in a machine. In theory, half the people are doing that already right now with the scrolling. They're already halfway there.
Yeah.
And that to me seems like mad scientists are still going to science. You see what I'm saying? So to me, the mad scientists of the world are not just blowing billions of dollars for nothing. It's like y'all know something, and y'all can kill if y'all want. That's old. We're beyond just killing. I think it's about controlling and using you as the strongest way to resynthesize reality through a quasi dimension called the internet that most people are tricked into joining when they already really have dimensional access right now. It's just been hidden. Oof.
Yeah.
That's I know, right?
Yeah,
That was like a
and
a
there's so
mother-
many, just talking about the cycles too, there's so many different cultures that talk about it, right? And there's so many different cultures that kind of point to it ending or switching or
right.
now
Exactly.
and
The Mayan, the whole
the Yuga cycle, right? Like all the different ones, the just the pole flip, right? Like there's a lot of people who track the pole
exactly.
shift, and that's supposed to happen at some point in the next 15 or 20 years, right?
Exactly. And I think that what they're saying is so imagine how if you believe in the round earth, the north and south pole, we all get that. From a flat earth standpoint or any other shape earth, because I don't even know what I claim the shape of earth actually is. But from an observable standpoint, this other model, this other common model has more of a north and south pole energetic conversation going on than a physical turning of the physical ball. But what I'm coming to find out is that I think they've been nodding to this whole time. I saw Elon Musk giving some interview. I don't know if it's his main office, but wherever he was, the Grok logo was behind him, like the logo for Grok. And it was colored. It was like a enhanced kind of fancy version, not just the 2D, vector version that we see on Twitter. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how have I never noticed this? The Grok logo is, I think, what Elon's going for. As it's been made aware to me, this living plane is beyond just what we can see. And at the top and bottom of this donut shaped, round from one perspective, flat from a different perspective thing exists a northern polarity and a southern polarity, magnetically speaking, energetically speaking, that absolutely can and most likely is about to flip. But it might not correlate with like the sky being on the ground and the ground being on the sky. That's or summer being in winter and winter being in summer, like the hemisphere switching. But it might correlate a magnetic of something that affects, whether we're talking CERN or something like the Large Hadron Collider or something that affects the Schumann in such a negative way that it's almost like the way I don't know, like a loud rock concert would be to a mother who's close to her water breaking in birth. See what I'm saying? It's like some physiological triggering happens of the normal gestational cycle due to some external influence, like a giant subwoofer. And I just have this hunch that whatever we're coming up into is kind of like this new it's uncharted waters, even from the esoteric side, the esoteric side of the conversation. It's just kind of like it's Elon Musk at the forefront of what all these other big pioneers were trying to do: break the veil. The veil being this word that we give for the separation of this side of the dimension to the next. Jordy Rhodes trying to break the veil. Uh, Yuval Noah Harari trying to break the veil. All these like weirdos and these different, Jeff Bezos probably trying to break the veil. Richard Branson trying to break the veil. And I think that those guys, those specific people I name, I think they know exactly what's going on. I think all of them are already augmented. When I look at Elon, I look at the future of what he's trying to sell now. Like he's out here 3D printing his own 13th kid, and his baby mama is talking about it. And I was trying to tell these Republicans, I was like, Republicans, y'all sitting there watching this dude. Y'all say I'm anti-abortion. Okay. But y'all are watching the anti-abortion president stand next to the dude who just had his baby mama go on Twitter and admit to everybody that they 3D printed. Now, she didn't use the word 3D print. She said, yes, our baby has a modified genome. We use CRISPR and the other PGTNM or the other protocol, along with in vitro fertilization, to develop this baby in a lab with a modified genome for superior intelligence and genetics. Elon and I were never together. This is a project that he's managing. This dude splooged on a petri dish, redesigned what he really wanted the baby's genome to look like, that stuck it in a conservative influencer's uterus, and like that's the 13th version of what that's the 13th one. And Grimes, the other baby mama, is out there trying to get in touch with him publicly because now he's not even returning her phone calls about their sick son from son 11 and 12. Yeah. I'm saying, you guys, transhuman is here. This dude is a transhuman, having transhuman kids by transhuman means, selling y'all on the transhuman interdimensional travel situation while y'all are funding it with y'all Tesla. But the whole point is that soon your consciousness can drive the Tesla because you stored on a server in Texas somewhere, and Elon has got the cybernetic link going. And you see what I'm saying? It's like they're creating this, they're priming everybody through the media to accept this world that's already been R&D'd, rolled out, and basically is meeting the scale to where the demand exists commercially. Elon sent a Tesla to space how many years ago, and then just kind of stopped talking about it? Why? Because Mars isn't way over there. Mars is right here. You just got to go into his special chair, the one that he got the intellectual property rights to, and go on his servers to access the ancient dimensional realities that apparently, to me, it seems like the fallen angels and the ancients sat with a couple scientists to develop this quasi level, this mezzanine dimension, and that your Geordie Roses and your D-Wave type are essentially the first up to utilize that in a commercial sense for like computational back and forth. Yeah. So like how we punch numbers, some machine elves or gnomes on the other side of the veil are about to sign up for some free gnome snacks and gnome health insurance by doing Amazon web processing and, SHA-256 decryption for blockchain processing.
They've
on this
leased
side.
the realm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect way to say they've leased the realm. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that more or less what's happened now? Humans have allowed our realm to be leased. The energy does not go toward the human experience of betterness. It's largely siphoned out to big industry.
One giant loosh firm.
You see what I mean? So now I think they're just making that they're like taking the loosh and making it power other loosh from the next dimension over. But yeah, hopefully that all makes sense. It all clicks. I love trying to elucidate at least what I see is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, man. This was, I think maybe that's a good way to kind of wrap it up, because I think we've come full circle with it. And, this was awesome.
It was, yeah. You thank you very, very much. You explained everything very well. Loved listening to you talk, and you are very eloquent and have a way with words and put very difficult things. I think you and I both understand a lot of what's going on, but at times I'm not able to put into words kind of what I think, and you do it very well. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm down. Like, we'll have more. I'll be the documentary. So by the time people see this, at least from maybe you guys release it soon, but like from my perspective, I'm gonna save all this stuff and then release it in a big chunk. But so by the time you're seeing this, depending on where you're watching it, you may or may not have already seen the documentary. These guys saw it and they really liked it. So if you want to see it and want to learn some stuff, maybe you'll really like it too.
Is there a release date kind of set for it yet?
Well, there was in my head, but I learned real quick with personal projects, the release date is your worst enemy.
Yeah.
It's totally ready right up until you just got to fix this one part. So I just finished the sound mix on volume 1, and I'm about to finish the edit on volume 2. And my plan was to release them both at the same time. Volume 1 is basically ready to release, but I haven't released it yet because I wanted to come out with volume 2 and be essentially the complete conversation of the whole map. And then I do plan on making subsequent volumes because I want to do whole volume on the banking, the core in the middle. Like, let's focus on these 8, but like understand, like, it's really just a handful of families at the end of the day, like private banking conversations that happen to fund governments instead of private citizens. And then those banking conversations being met with galactic and intergalactic. And again, I'm not speaking like planet far, far away, but spiritual, like dimensional, ancient. Like I think no matter what religion or not you are, even if you're a Dungeons and Dragons and Stranger Things fan, the concept of devils of antiquity, Nephilim, the ancients, the Rephaim, the Gibberim, the ancient giants, the Gilgamesh epic. These things span multiple conversations and multiple cultures. And I think it's those things that have been here this whole time, working with hybridizing programs, shape-shifting programs, and then governmental structures that have gotten us where we are here. So I see the disclosure as being more of a collapse of the middle layer, where the top layer becomes the control layer and not the middle layer, which was the management control layer before. And we're at a place where I think it's time that people just have enough information to wrap their head around it. Because otherwise, I think you're just going to be sitting ducks for the lies. I mean, kind of like we are now, but like plenty of people are waking up to this. And gentlemen such as yourself are doing good at just making the conversation broader than just Canada or just America or just, wherever you're located. It's kind of a global thing happening.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, we'll keep hitting it and keep doing our thing, and
we don't always crush it, but we still come back every week and
yeah,
grind it out, and
yeah, that's great though.
I'll be
checking you out.
We appreciate that, Chris, and maybe one more time, tell the people where they can find you, and
Sure. So to find me, you can look for the 6-7 podcast. It's literally the number 6-7 podcast everywhere but YouTube, because YouTube doesn't allow you to use numbers. So it's 6-7 spelled out. But other than YouTube, it's the number 6, the number 7, and podcast. And I'm most active on Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey. And I'm about to actually, the bigger plan, because keep in mind, I worked in marketing, so I know how to brand and market. I just never wanted to do that with the podcast. I wanted it to be my personal hobby thing. And now with this new conversation, I'm like, no, we're about to brand this to the hilt. So I'm going to have Spotify, Apple Music, the whole wide release. I'm going to try to put it everywhere, but I want it to be themed. I don't necessarily want it to be just, my archives. I want to start with the solid conversation and then move it forward on brand and on topic from there. Number them, give them names and things like that. So I have a good several hundred hours of work already out, but there will be a lot more and a lot better organization with the launch of this project moving forward this summer.
Awesome. Well, you got a couple fans here, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye on what you got coming out. So
thank you.
Thank you.
And when I'm up in BC, I might have to hit you up.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah. Dinner's on us.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. I'll take it.
All right.
For the land of the high seas and the tall trees, I'm Mike.
I'm Andrew.
Have a good night.
We'll catch you next time.